Greetings and welcome to the Saco School Board meeting for September 14, 2022. Call this meeting to order at 7 p.m. Let the record reflect that all school board members are present. I'd like to invite you all to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you very much. This time we'll move on to item 3 of the agenda, and that is to enter into a workshop for site selection construction topics. And I believe we will start off with item 3A, which is a site overview. Superintendent Ray?
All right, good evening, everybody. Thank you for all that comes. We are in a workshop session, so this is designed to have the ability for people to ask a few questions, have more conversation. We have done, over the last year and a half, an incredible amount of work trying to move forward on the building project of something that is, we may not have many chances in our lifetime to do something as impactful for schools in the city of Saco as holding this ranking and ability to build a school using state funds. Now, certainly there are many complications throughout that, whereas the state is up against debt limits, and we know that construction costs are pricey, and acquiring land, as we've learned, is not the easiest thing. And when you do have a piece of land, it may have some wetlands on it, or there may be transportation pieces, and you have a lot to consider. But over the course of this project, we've had several meetings. There have been public forums where we had honed in on the Sweetser site, and with the bad news of that being pulled from us, we were back looking at our number 2 and 3 choices, which was Claire and SMS. And certainly there are people who have feelings one way or the other about those, but we didn't necessarily always hear them at any of our other meetings. And so we're getting to the point where we need to start making some solid decisions as a community, knowing that the school committee is the group that will make the decision on site. The city council will certainly have the ability to put questions on a ballot. That is what your role in some of this. And then there's also the pieces about when we look at not everything in these buildings gets paid for by the state. So there's always the local piece, and that's where school committee and building committees and city councils will negotiate some of those things about, while we've been in the point of talking about land and sites and traffic and vernal pools and wetlands, we have yet to have many conversations about program and aspects of the building that we would like to have. And then if you've been in several meetings, and Rob always jokes about it with me, is I'm always someone who thinks that as a city we need to have some sort of auditorium for productions and plays and gathering points. But those are decisions and discussions that have to occur because those come at local costs and charges. And so we are down to kind of looking at 2 sites, and we are also trying to move this as quickly as possible because our children here in the community have not had this opportunity for a new building. There are time limits that are there from the state, and I think they expect for us to hopefully be at bond by the year 2027, which means that was the proposed where the state board thinks we should be opening a school. I think that's the number that the year they gave us the other day, Rob, is 27 is the expected bond date. And there's also some pressure on the state construction piece that because the state has a certain debt amount and projects take longer to build, they're not utilizing their full debt ceiling. And so as projects drag, they get a lot of pressure from the people behind us on the list saying, hey, what's going on here? We want to build our project. Why aren't we using the full debt capacity that the state has? So there have been many questions about sites, and there have been things in the public about roadways and Route 5, 112 connectors, and all of the pieces that come together for us to start making a decision. And I'd like to invite Oak Point, who is our hired architects, engineers, and site kind of the experts here, to kind of give everybody in the room kind of an overview of where some things are. And this is designed in a way, a workshop format, for us to ask questions, make points, talk about certain things, because we really need to start flushing this out if we as a community are going to move forward and have a target vote of next November, not even this November. And I think with certain parts of the project, that timeline is something that we will have to work hard to make. So, invite Rob from Oak Point to kind of talk about in the back. If you have some good handouts here, but you also have some bigger maps that are there. And I'd like to invite Rob to come up and talk about a couple of the sites and some of the things from his expertise of where he's at.
Sure. Thanks, Jeremy. First of all, we've been on board for about a year and had a whole bunch of building committee meetings and a whole bunch of sub-meetings for site selection and for programming, and a number of public forums that we presented where we were at the different phases. So this is good that we can have this conversation, hopefully wrap things up. We had spent an awful lot of time on the Sweetser site, and as you know, it's no longer available to us. But based on straw polls at the public forums, it was decided that was the direction we were going to go. I'm not sure if it wasn't an official vote, but almost everybody. I don't think there were any dissensions. There were probably about 50 people there, and. So that's not available to us, but we had spent an awful lot of time and your money and state money to investigate how that would work for a project site. And so it was disappointing, but we moved on. We had two other sites, as Jeremy just mentioned, that might fit the bill. And we've not done the extensive analysis of those two sites that we did for the Sweetser site, because this happened fairly recently. But we had done a lot of work beforehand and rated them on a scale based on not having all the technical data to back it up yet, but more to what would make some sense. So we had started with a whole bunch of sites, and we really narrowed it down to those three as ones that might work. So the other two sites are the Clare site, which the city owns part of, and there's a private owner next to it that we would need to convince to sell us the property to make it work. It's on Route 1. We'll start with this. So Jeremy said we hadn't done a whole lot of programming. We actually have done quite a bit of programming on the buildings. We have not narrowed anything down, but the programming to date has been us talking to your staff and your administrators and the folks that are in the committees. And basically what we end up with here is two buildings. One is 1 through 5. It's yes, thank you, Meg. And the other one is pre-KK, and the reason its footprint is about the same is we haven't narrowed anything down on these projects, on these buildings yet. As far as this is just the wish list kind of a plan. And the pre-K to K, we're looking at it being all one floor. So the footprint's about the same as we envision the first grade to fifth grade building, which would have 3 stories for the classroom wing. So in this case, we're coming in from Route 1, and one of the concerns was trying to leave on Route 1 to the south, but the idea is that we've put a roadway in that goes down to Millbrook industrial site. So most people would come in, and if they wanted to take a right to leave after the school, they could on Route 1, or they could go all the way down through the driveway to Millbrook, and then you could actually get to a light. The nice thing about a windy road like this is, if you've ever been to any of the schools that pick up or drop off, this windy road will be full of cars. So it's actually a great way to cue things. And in both cases, what we're trying to do is have the parent drop off and the bus drop off separated, but close to each of the schools. So we have the parking and parent drop off on the north end, and as you come winding down around for your exit, there's a racetrack there. That's the bus loop. So the buses would drop off there, and you would have it would be easier to monitor as far as picking up, getting the kids into the school from the parents and from the bus drop off. And the amount of fields that we're showing are the ones that we would expect the state to support. But the state has told us from a program standpoint that they'll support 5 grades. If it's a K-5 school, and then the city of Saco would need to fund the pre-K to K building, and there would be a shared expense as far as the roads and things like that. So our argument would be, if we need a road for one of the schools, that would take care of that. But if there's anything we need to do for the pre-KK, the state would be very supportive of Saco paying for that. So the site is pretty flat. The light blue that you see is wetlands, but they're not important wetlands. There's a couple of small spots of vernal pools, also not significant. And down behind the school is the brook. And the one thing I will say about this site, from a positive standpoint, the development would be fairly reasonable, because it's a fairly low sloping site until you get to the orange, which is the steeply sloped areas that go down to the brook. And then the other thing is going down Millbrook, you actually connect to the Eastern Trail. So the brook out behind would be a great opportunity for outdoor learning for the kiddos, and there'd be lots of opportunities for that. So could you just show what the city owns? And the line right down the middle is about, to the north of that line is what the city owns, and the land where the racetrack is, and the lower soccer field, United School field, would be the property we'd have to acquire. Any questions so far?
I have one.
Yes, sir.
So, just a quick question. So, the land that we would need to acquire, is that landowner aware that we are discussing this? Okay.
Yes.
And what is their,
We've been told
Not
that
at this
they're
point.
interested. They have not put it on the market, but they are willing to sell it to the city for a school. That's what we've been told by a number of people. The state supports 20 acres plus another acre per 100 students. So for the state-funded portion of it, they would support 30 usable acres, and the whole site would need to be about 40 usable. So what's not usable here would make a really nice park or conservation area for the city, mostly on the land that you already own, plus probably the right-hand side of the land we'd be purchasing. I'm not sure you'd want to retain the brick part, but it's a pretty site. I was pleasantly surprised when we walked out there the first time. There's a few places where people have left things behind. I wouldn't call it a dump, but there is a couple of small dumping grounds of interesting things that one might find in the woods. But there was nothing that was noticed that was there was a significant problem, but we would, no matter which site it would be, we would be going for an environmental assessment of the site, which has not been done here. And the wetlands were done earlier as a, by the current landowner, and some of the work that was done for the city on the Clare site. Sir?
Is there an opportunity to connect, as part of this project, to connect the site or the schools with the Eastern Trail there? So
Yeah, so that to me was pretty cool. So right now, there's a way to get to the Eastern Trail by going down the Industrial Park Road, which is little used. And I think there's a trail either already there to the Eastern Trail from the right-of-way, which is that lower stubbed road to Millbrook. We've been told that there's a trail on site that gets you to the Eastern Trail. It would be possible to get on site, but as you can see, the Millbrook is pretty wide, and putting a bridge in there, a couple of developers that were out there said, yeah, we can just put a big culvert in there, and we were saying, I'm not sure that's a great idea, but you possibly could do it, but maintaining the environmental integrity was important to us. Okay, we'll go on to the next one. You can always go back if you'd like to. Go ahead.
Rob, let's just, because I know that the room sometimes doesn't allow us to, because of the way we're trying to be on
Yes.
TV and everything. People in the audience, questions at this point. This would be a great time to ask some of those. If there's anything you'd like to know about what's said. Mike?
Is there the wetlands, is there mitigation, is there replacement? There is some blue on some of your sites. How does that work?
Right, so this was a placeholder to make sure the buildings would fit correctly, and we could fit them on. Our intention is, if this is the site that we end up using, we would look a little harder at the way the driveway comes in and the building's set. We're trying to keep the buildings out of the wetlands, the parking, especially up in the north piece, would have some wetlands, and there would be some wetland fill, but it was our feeling that we could do a better job given the time. But this was put together in about a week or two once the Sweetser site went away. So we've not spent the amount of time that we need to make this site really sing. Welcome.
The city bought this land on a choice between that and the driving range out of Cascades. Doesn't the city already have comfort that this land is pretty free and clear of any major problems to develop otherwise? I like the question for that.
I don't know of any reason why it wouldn't be developable.
Yes, sir.
just, do you have a sense of, I mean, I guess I can kind of ballpark it, but what the percentage of land that we need to acquire from the private entity, from the private person is on this? It looks like maybe like a third.
Yeah,
About right?
that's probably a good guess, maybe a little less than a third, but that's probably pretty close. So when you're doing a school project, the state will pay for the average of 2 appraisals for the land, and they'll pick up the tab for that. If you, as the owner of the school, own the land, you don't get anything. You get a school. So that's the idea with the school. So the fact that you own the land makes it somewhat easier, and I would certainly make the argument that the state would pay for that portion of it. But the state is going to push back during the design process before concept approval about how much is going to be state and how much is going to be city. If we're going to build a school here, which is 40% of it, do we have to pay for, or 25% of it, do we need to pay for 25% of the land? And we would certainly make the argument that we're already donating a bunch of it. But, yes, ma'am.
I think this is more of a question for the city, but because it's city-owned, because we're looking at this isn't going up for sale. It's not on the market or anything like that on your end, is it?
It is currently not on the market.
Okay. And then like you guys were discussing before, you've already had conversations with the people who own the other property, and they seem interested.
Yes, we haven't, but people in your committees have.
The access road coming off of Millbrook, is that dedicated busing, or is that going to be multiple use? How is that going to connect to Millbrook?
Right. The intention that we're showing here is that it would be not dedicated for buses. It would be possibly dedicated for buses coming in, but going out, we want to have the parents have a good way to leave the site without making a left onto Route 1. But we haven't determined that because we haven't done the full traffic study of this parcel yet, and we still need to do that.
And the land that it's cutting through, is that, I'm trying to remember, is there a road there already, or is that an easement we're getting to cut through? How is that road going to be developed?
Yes, so the road that she's talking about is in a right-of-way that's currently there. There's no road there, it's just, right now it's about a path, so it would become a road.
Dave?
We believe it's 75 feet.
Just out of curiosity, since we're talking about land that we'd have to acquire, do we have a ballpark price tag?
A ballpark price tag of this property?
Yeah.
I don't. Kevin? Right, so I'm not sure what it would be, but again, if this was the direction we took, there would be some negotiating between the state, the city, or the school board and the landowner. And again, so we have had a situation where the appraisal came in at one thing and the owner wanted more money and wouldn't budge, and the difference was paid for by the community we were working for because it made a lot of sense. But but in those cases, it really did make a lot of sense. Sir. Yes. Okay. Sorry. From here out. Yes, sir. Okay. Right. So, yes, so it does need to go through the appraisal process, and it needs to be at least 2, and the state will pay for the average of the 2. And if it's not, if it's not a reasonable number, then you choose not to go down that route. And if it is a reasonable number, but it's still more than the average of the 2, you can ask for another appraisal, and the state has some very specific ways to go through that. Yes, ma'am. So what is the process to get the land as quickly as possible? To decide what land we want is the first thing we need to do. And then we can get the appraisal process going because I think we would need that whole piece of property in order to build this. We could possibly push over to towards the back of the city, but there's really no other way out of the property except for cutting through it. So you just basically start the negotiation as soon as possible. Well, the question is, if we were to get a purchase and sale agreement on this property beforehand, would we get reimbursed for it? And the answer is yes. If you actually own it, we'd have to talk about that, but we'd definitely need to, the state doesn't really want you to go too far along the process unless you have a purchase and sale agreement, so we don't end up spending an awful lot of their money and your money and not being able to move forward. So the answer is yes. Yes, sir.
Confirm that on the 75-foot width, that was wide enough for industrial commercial uses, number one. And number two, the right-of-way actually goes all the way to the clear parcels. So if you were able to fit it on the clear parcels, you wouldn't have to buy land. The worst case scenario, you could just use the right-of-way to get to the clear parcels.
Interesting concept. You could put at least one building in there, possibly two. We were just trying to, again, fairly quickly scramble after losing the Sweetser site and show how it could work. Yes, that would be great. 175-foot right-of-way wouldn't be great for a major roadway, but for a driveway for a school would be fine. Pat, do you agree? Sorry. Do you think the 75-foot right-of-way would be adequate for a school driveway?
Most of the city right-of-way is only 50 feet wide, up to a maximum of 100, so 75 is
Great, thank you.
only going to be 30 feet of that, and you have room for sidewalks, signage, drainage swales, whatever else.
Thanks. Sorry to put you on the spot. Right. We would have to figure out with the state if we could get a light or if we wanted a light. So the question is, do we have a way out onto Route 1 directly? We would plan on having a right-hand turn onto Route 1, which would be the appropriate thing to do. We're just concerned about the left-hand turn. And the state would probably require us to put a left-hand turn lane into the site anyways. And if the city makes us do it, the city has to pay for it. But if DOT tells us we have to do it, then the state pays for it. I'm pretty sure the DOT would make us do it. Yes, sir.
So that would be a right turn only onto Route 1, headed towards Scarborough, not headed towards Saco.
Or Flag Pond Road.
Now, has there been a traffic study?
No. We did a traffic study of the Sweetser, but we've not done
Right.
one here yet.
Do we know of any other developments that might be being built out that way?
I don't know.
Just seems like it's further out of town than where all the developments and the houses are being built.
Right. I would love to stick it right downtown or someplace on a 40-acre piece of land. We looked for a long time to find something, and we were fortunate to be able to find 3 potential sites. I mean, normally we wouldn't put one in an industrial park like we were at Sweetser, although some cities do. And the same thing with here. Going into this, I had considered that it would be easier to find some sites west of the turnpike, and there wasn't anything. But the other thing about west of the turnpike is traffic, and it's also utilities and that sort of thing. But we were wide open. I think the early plan, the first page, Meg, can you show that again? So we studied the entire town, the city, to try to find spots. Clearly the Heath wasn't a good place to go, and we're going to be talking about the middle school in just a moment. But finding land that was available to us was was like pulling teeth. We had an easier time in Portland, which was much more congested. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
It's also worth noting, this is only like a mile, not even a mile and a half away from where this site would have, this entrance would have been if the site had been on Sweets.
So what Jen was saying is, this site is only about a mile or a mile and a half from where Sweetser would have been had we gone there in that direction through the industrial park. Move on? Good, thank you. And thank you. Can we go to middle school? So, the middle school site, and in all honesty, before we did any work at all, it was my favorite. Because I like campuses, but the more we walked it, the more we looked at it, the more we looked at the complications here, it fairly quickly went the other way. So the couple of things I'm going to show you is that the two buildings are shown to fit on the site. The access would come in from Route 5. In this case, can you go to the next slide, please, Meg? So we were told that there was a connector, which we'll follow up a little bit more on that. And right now, the right-of-way that the city owns is the black squiggly line on the top that cuts across the bottom of Star Homes and through the woods and has about 4 stream crossings. And where it comes in off of Route 5, the right-of-way actually intercepts Route 5 about 30 feet below the road, and at an intersection where there is a very tight power line. So we analyzed this because we really wanted to see how we could make this work. And so the other thing about this, if we can go the other one again, Meg, please, the first one. Thanks. So you can see this kind of tight. There's a lot of slope. The orange lines there are steep slopes, so we'd have to do a lot of cuts and fills. And we can't build parking lots 10 feet below the schools because the kids and all the handicap folks need to be able to get to the school. We wanted to come up with a way to separate the parking and the bus loop again. So the bus loop is in the middle. The parking for the pre-K would be on the northeast, which is upper, right in the middle. And then the other school would be down below. So if you've ever been out behind the middle school, those are pretty steep slopes. And the middle school kids in the last few years have built a series of trails out there and environmental study areas, which could be redone elsewhere, but it's just something they're very proud of. And also the subdivision to the southeast, we wanted to try to keep the schools away from that as much as we can, so we didn't build a 140,000 square foot building right across the street from those 2 houses or 4 houses. And on the other hand, the gray hatch line on the northwest side is that power line that goes along next to the school. So it's been challenged to fit it in here. But we've been able to do that, but we've not done any wetland studies or traffic studies here yet either. So we have some work to do. And then it came to our attention, I'm sorry, anything we do on the site proper of the middle school, if we build something on it or put a roadway on it, every square feet of property has to be replicated because you received a federal grant for the work on the school over the years. And it pretty much encompasses the site except for the actual building. So we would, and you can't buy your way out of it. You have to physically buy the same amount of property and rebuild the same thing on another site. You can't do it on another city-owned land. So what we were suggesting, excuse me, is the southwestern portion of Star Homes, the green rectangle you see at the top is a U9 school, a U9 soccer field. We would propose to buy the property there from Star Homes. It is for sale, and replace whatever we steal from the middle school up there. So we don't want to move program elements from the middle school way over there, but things like practice fields and that sort of thing, or after-school functions, could certainly be up the road. But from getting those backfields just from schools a ways now, so to increase that would be tough. So there is a study that was done, which we were shown, that shows a connector going along. Yeah, that's that 30-foot drop I was talking about. Let's show a connector that's shown on the back of a study. It hadn't actually been evaluated to a lot of length. It just basically said after the new exit is put in, then it would be studied some more, and sometime after 2026, it would be investigated some more. The city doesn't own the land. The city owns up to the red line of the southwest portion, which is part of the middle school. Then there's some privately owned property from there below. There's a large stream crossing right around that same spot, and a lot of grade change. So this is just something we know is there, but it hasn't been a developed plan. Yes, sir.
So as it relates to that black line, the connector, so that is a back of a napkin
Yes.
drawing. So there's nothing really in the pipeline.
There's no.
And so as it relates to being able to access this site, the state would not even look at that as anything that's even on the table.
No.
So we're left with the other line,
Yes.
which may or may not be viewed this way by a lot of people, but it's connected to Chantal and Blake, and that effectively becomes a connector road just by default if that's built.
We thought of that. We'd probably put a gate up, but that's yes.
Yeah.
We were
That would be the
concerned
kind
about
of thing that wouldn't prevent someone from dropping their kids off
Not at
or
all.
picking their kids up and producing traffic in there.
Yeah, we've actually done a couple of schools where that was the case.
And so the gate concept is really around a public safety access primarily.
Yes, totally.
Would that also necessitate the same kind of thing on, say, Hillview Avenue or Jeffrey Avenue on the other side?
Probably. Yeah. But I mean, the nice thing is you could get public safety to the school fairly easy from the other side, but it would be a great place to drop your kids off if you didn't want to wait in line.
Right, but from the other side means that they leave the fire station, cross over to Shadowgy Road, go all the way up to Route 5, then go out to where this 1.5-mile road lives, and then come back to the school. That's why I'm saying that
Right.
if they're really talking about it being a public safety access, that they're gonna want access much closer in either or possibly both of those neighborhoods.
Right. So, and the price tag of the napkin sketch was $9.6 million, and that was a few years ago. 9.6 million. And we were even thinking if it's a roadway, if it's a connector, it's supposed to be a connector. You're not supposed to build it like the connector in Biddeford. There's really nothing built on it except for Mountain Road crossed it at one point. So putting it through a school site's pretty tough. And we'd have to have setbacks for the school. So what we're showing, the school is already pretty tight. We'd have to basically get rid of the parking and put that someplace else. It doesn't mean we can't do it, but that's why this did not rise to the occasion as like the other site did. So the straight shot was supposed to be $9.6 million, so I would assume the longer shot would be $1.5 million, which the state would pay for some of it, but not that they would not pay for connector road. So if it was just a driveway, they would assist with it, but they wouldn't pay for connector road.
So I'm sorry, I think I misunderstood. So you're talking $9.6 million would be for which road?
The short one.
The short one. So the longer one that goes all through all that, how much is that one estimated?
Well, it was
Ballpark?
$1.5 million.
More?
$1.5 million total, yeah.
Million and a half total?
Yeah. It would
Because it'd be a
dri-
smaller road.
It would be a smaller road. It would be a driveway. I mean, right now, we're just going to, and that's without actually doing any of the wetlands design or the crossings. So the 9.6 million, we didn't do it. So I'm just saying that that's data we were given by a prior study. If that was 9.6 million, and there's only one stream crossing, we would have 3 or 4 going the other way, and major changes. So yeah, I would have to believe it would be $1.5 million or more.
Okay, so $1.5 million for the,
I mean, 15 million, I'm sorry.
okay, I was like,
more.
how is that
I'm
short
sorry.
road?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
15.5
Yeah,
million.
let me have some more tea. No, it would be 15 or plus.
15 plus $1 million for the squiggly, crazy road.
Right.
Okay.
A lot of queuing space, though.
You said that we need to, if we were to build this, we would need to replace land someplace else. What are we looking at for acreage that roughly in this rough draft and price tag-ish?
Again, so what would be the price tag in the area we would need to purchase? We don't have an actual price tag or the actual land. This was done fairly quickly like the other one was, but eyeballing it, we could buy the Star property land, and I'm not sure how much, if somebody in the room might know how much that is, and that would be adequate, I think, to do what we would need to do to replace it. Because honestly, what I'd want to do is squeeze the buildings a little bit further and go a little bit closer to the middle school with the buildings and the parking, and in so doing, we'd be taking more of that. So at this point, it just shows that it will fit, but not well so far.
So what are you looking at for acreage roughly?
20 acres? Yeah, ballpark 10 to 20, depends on how much we really have to take. And I think the Star Homes had about 18 usable. Kevin?
Clay or butter is agreeable to sell. Is the Star Homes agreeable to sell to the fields? Are property owners where that access road could go, are they agreeable to sell?
I don't know that. We don't. So the question is, are the owners agreeable to sell either the Star Homes property? I honestly don't know. It was brought to us as a possibility when we were doing the site selection in the first place. And then the other piece, we've been told so far, because honestly, we looked at that beautiful farmland and said, boy, that would be a great place for a school. But at least for as far as the access from the back, we've been told that they are not amenable to selling it.
For the microphone for everyone here, did you ask anyone that's on the committee or who works for the city that have they been told that the land is available for sale?
The Fenderson property? Okay. Okay, so has anybody in the city been told that the Fenderson property is for sale? Or anybody in the audience here? Okay, so for the microphone. Okay. So we've been told that the Fenderson property, which would be the key one to actually get through to the back from a driveway or to do the connector, is not interested in selling and is annoyed that people keep asking them. And then the Star property, I don't know.
Ryan, you might be able to answer this better, but does this have to be new acquired property, or would the Foss fields be available to use for the schools?
For the LWCF funding site,
Yeah.
it would be, they require what's called a yellow appraisal. They require the amount of money where it would be new acquired property. That's my understanding too, is that whatever we have to replace that we take from the site would have to be newly acquired property. We have bumped into this on a few other schools.
I have a related question for that topic.
Yes.
So there's a process in place and rules associated with us not being able to touch the property. I'm assuming that the federal government is going to have a say as to whether or not a particular piece of property is suitable per their requirements. Is that something that has to be in place before we even talk about utilizing this piece of land as part of this configuration? Meaning, in terms of the process and putting all of this together, do we have to identify a piece of property that's available, have the state bless that, then turn around and say, okay, now we can use the Saco Middle School site in its entirety or whatever portion we need, and so that's what we're going to use to satisfy what we need from the state, like the logistics of all of that?
Right. I think before you get concept approval, you would have to have that, but as far as moving forward, we would just need to know that we're going to take 5 acres or 20 acres, whatever it is, out of there, and you're going to have to find suitable property. So if we suggest the Star Home site and they say no, we would have to look at another field someplace and make ball fields out of it. But
Right, but would the state allow us to move forward with Saco Middle School under the assumption that we're going to use part of the fields if we haven't satisfied the federal requirement yet?
I don't know that for sure, but I don't think that they would allow us to go past site approval unless we had a plan in place that was approved. That would be my guess. Yes, ma'am.
With this configuration with the 2 new buildings on the SMS property, how badly does this pigeonhole us to ever expanding, say, SMS or the new schools 50 years down the road? Like, it seems to me that because we're going to be squeezing these these buildings on this property, that it's not going to really leave us a whole lot of room to expand. Like, say, SMS, if we do have any growth and we need to expand that building,
Right.
will we have that ability to do that? Like,
So when we build new buildings, we design some of the classroom wings so you can add, if it was a 3-story building, 6 more classrooms. But you wouldn't be able to build another school on this site because I don't assume that the environmental laws are going to get any easier. And there is more availability at the Clare site. Matter of fact, you could probably put another school on the other side of. A small one on the other side of the Millbrook if you could get to it. So there is more expansion over there. But I don't mean to sound funny about this, but if you needed something that big, you would know where to put it, and hopefully somebody would actually sell you the land. But this is the deck we were handed. So, sir.
I guess just following up on that, I think earlier I remembered seeing something about projections of student enrollment. It's actually declining. Is that it for the projections of the school? Is that right, or am I misinterpreting something?
Jeremy?
Yes, the entire state of Maine has a projection of declining enrollment, and we're no different than that. Again, I think there are many factors. Big factor here is just affordable housing is a challenge for us. And so that has to be part of the conversation. But in the state formula, they look at that 10-year study and they give you a 5% buffer built into that. But there have been projects in the state, like Rob said, where other dynamics change. And, you know, I can give you an example of my time in Westbrook where that was built and constructed as a 6 through 8 school. It became a 5 through 8 school, and the third floor was constructed in a way where they could add 6 to 8 classrooms, and that's what they did in that building. So very similar to this is Rob and his team, no matter what you have for a building, would be designed in a way that you could probably stack some classrooms on ends and whatnot. So they prepare you for that.
And so, kind of on that point, and just looking at the schematic here, and where the buildings are positioned, was there any thought or just kind of trying to think creatively a little bit of moving those buildings, like you had mentioned, closer to the actual SMS where there is, you know, the fields are currently, and then it looks like there's no orange to the left of the easement. Like relocating some of these buildings closer to SMS, would that relieve some of the pressure on this $15 million? Like, would we need to do this $15 million road by rearranging some of this stuff? Or?
Well, the issue with the $15 million road is there's a significant concern about the amount of traffic that goes to SMS now. You know, for traffic getting in, for people on 112. So the road coming in was more to have a second way, and that would actually relieve some of that stress. So that was a big part of that. The other thing is the more closely we move towards SMS, the more land we would have to replace someplace. And you get to a certain point where we don't want the middle school kids to have to go past 2 other schools to get to their baseball field or their soccer field that's being used for gym, you know. So that was part of the concern, is the closer we got to that, the more impact the new school would have on the existing program. Yes.
Also looking at where you have the new field that we would probably need to acquire because we take over some of SMS's field. It's so far away from everything else too that I feel like there would need to be a parking lot there almost for like after school stuff. So, because people park and then walk, what I'm going to guess is a quarter
Yes.
mile or so to.
It's a really long road to park along too.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's true. You could park along that, assuming
Yeah,
that it was
right.
wide enough. But.
Right, but that's absolutely true. You'd either widen it so you could, or you build a parking lot. Yes, we would have to do that there. I don't live in Saco. I live in Arundel, but my kids over the years have played on Saco fields, and you have a lot of them compared to other schools, but they're always used. Yeah, but they're so far away, right? So what I'm saying is you make very good use of your fields, and stealing one would probably not be a good idea. Sir?
I guess just to follow up on my question, so this is the layout for SMS?
Yes.
I mean, ballpark, that's what,
Yes.
we're not moving, okay.
You know, the intention is we could tweak this just like the other site. We could move the building. I honestly think the pre-K building would get a little bit smaller for either site. I mean, we just want to make sure we were not picking on one site or favoring another. We're just trying to make sure we're looking at apples and apples. So the 1 through 5 is probably pretty close to what we would end up with, but the pre-K would probably get quite a bit smaller, or go with a 2-story. Sir.
Is there any other possibility of a direct access to Route 5 coming out by the golf course that could be had? Just have an access road instead of doing that mile and a half?
I don't know. Is there another way to get there from the golf course? off of Route 5 to here. Right. Yeah, so that was the $9.6 million connector road 3 or 4 years ago. So it would be certainly be shorter, but if it was going to, when I saw that, I said, well, maybe that would make a good driveway for the school, but it wouldn't be a connector road, because if it became a connector road, I'm not sure you have the school built along it without having significant setbacks towards that subdivision on the right. We haven't investigated that. Right, that, even before we knew what his concerns were, that was our hope, that we could do something like that, not knowing that the connector was shown there.
The other piece on that is that all of the utilities are on the 112 side of things. So your three-phase power, your sewer, your water's all on the other side. So you're going to have to, you would have to also come up the side of the driveway in order to bring the power in, which will also create probably some square footage from the federal, the parks piece that would need to be added to the purchase on that.
Yes. Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Mac, I think I heard you say that if say the access road did go in, that the schools would have to have a certain setback from the road?
Yes.
And so that would change everything, we'd push it closer to the development that's behind there?
Yes. Again, if it was a driveway, it wouldn't be as big a deal because it would just be for the school. But if it was a connector road, there are a lot of challenges.
Pat?
Either of these proposals eliminate the use of the modulars that are currently at Saco Middle? Or is that even being thought of right now?
Repeat that, no, none of those proposals have anything to do with Saco Middle. Anything that would be done at Saco Middle for those modulars will be a local-only cost.
So it doesn't matter that if we went with the campus, it's not going to change the existing Saco Middle at all? Thank you.
So the question is, how long will we have to wait for this to go through the process of getting to this site versus the Claire site? So when we thought we were going, and I'm not, I don't mean to harp on this, but when we thought we were going to Sweetser, the intention was to go for concept in June this year, which is actually fairly aggressive for this project. With the Claire site, if everything goes smoothly, we might be able to get there, but we have studies that we have to redo, so it might be November next year. Because we were asked to. We just want to. We went through this process and showed the site and showed the others before, And now that we're stepping back because of this, the Sweetser modification, we just need to take a look at both of these again and see if, you know, we started with 20 different sites, and we narrowed it down to 6 and 3 that would actually work. And now number 1 isn't there, so we're taking a really hard look at number 2 and number 3, and just reassessing because we need to, and so that's why we're here. The Claire site would certainly be a lot quicker. It's a fairly flat site for development. I think the state would buy into it. Because we actually talked to the state about both of these just this week, and their concern is about the dollars here and about timing. The thing is, we do, as Jeremy mentioned, we need a bond 2027. We already have an extension to get to that. It's about a 2.5-year construction time. It's about a 15-month design time. So backing up from that, if we had the ability to get approval a year from now, we would be able to meet that goal. If we had to push this back a couple of years, you could lose the project. You have a certain window, and to keep it in mind, because it's really important, is when this goes to the voters, if it doesn't pass, you're pretty much done from a timing standpoint. So we just have to make sure we've answered every voter's question beforehand so we can go forward. And it's a major undertaking for the state, and it's a major undertaking for the local taxpayers.
And Rob, there's also a big difference in this piece between the black line being a driveway and the black line being a road.
Yes.
Meaning a road that's public use, because there's a huge difference in setbacks, there's timing, there's different permitting and pieces that the city would have to do, which again, when we looked at that plan, that was, I think it said in Pat, what did it say in there? That was not something that the DOT was going to, or state was going to be involved in?
In the 2018 study, when that connector road concept was being about, Maine Turnpike Authority, who's, you know, about to undertake a $40 million interchange project, made it very clear that they would not be, so the three parties involved were Maine Turnpike, City, and Maine Department of Transportation. Maine Turnpike has already said, we are not putting anything towards a connector road from Route 5 to 112. That's outside the scope of anything that we will work with. Maine Department of Transportation has done nothing more than agree that it may be a future improvement worth exploring. Did not commit to any funding, and the city has not done any. It's really a wait and see what these new ramps and 4 new traffic signals along the Route 112 corridor do, and how regional traffic responds to, you know, essentially a major change on how they can get on and off the highway, which won't be done until 2025. So knowing how many cars this is going to serve and exactly where the region is coming and going from and to the new exit, it's pretty hard to put any real numbers to how many cars are going to be on the connector road. What does it have to serve? Does it have its own traffic signals? The only other thing while I'm commenting on this is the concepts you've seen with that property. I would caution against showing or moving forward any concept that does not let cars come from 112 and Route 5 to get to the school. Because if you take all of these people, where is everyone going after they drop the kid off? They're getting on the turnpike. If you take them and bring them all back to Bradley Street, which has almost no widening ability for turn lanes once you get in the in-town portion of Bradley Street without taking private property, all of that traffic is cutting through the cut-through streets that we've been trying to work around for the last decade plus of Garfield, Franklin, Tasker. So now you're taking 1,000 kids to school and all of that commuter traffic on the turnpike and letting them only go back to Route 5. So I think any concept, whether you take the connector road and show the driveway, or you have 2 driveways instead of 1, you can't bring that many people to that location without letting them get to 112 and Route 5.
Patrick, can I ask you another question? if this was a driveway, where would a connector road go if this was a driveway? What would be the next piece of, because the DOT shows it exactly like what's drawing. Let's say you build this school and there's a driveway, we can't now go through the parking lot or the building. Where in this neighborhood would there be a connector road if we were building a building first, which seems like that would be the first part of the timeline?
I mean, without seeing final layout, I can't definitively say, but I think you move the, if there is a future Route 5 112 connector that's supposed to serve as just a bypass, essentially a bypass road, it's not supposed to have traffic except the traffic trying to get to and from major commuting roads, you've moved it out towards Loudon Road. Maybe Loudon Road gets reconfigured as that connector at some point. Again, you're talking, projecting out major traffic changes in the region and the growth of Dayton, Buxton, Hollis, who's using Route 5 versus 112. But you've used up that corridor if you occupy it with a school. You already have a CMP high-tension power line to work around, so as soon as you put a school in driveways, yes, you have probably used up that corridor for use as a connector road in the sense of a true connector.
Because I think, as Rob said, there'd be quite a difference between where you would locate a school based off your driveway and where you would locate the school based off a major roadway. And I think, Rob, you, as we talked about Claire, that was 250, 300 feet off the road, which we could say Route 1's a big road for us. That wouldn't be here, and I know that certainly anybody who would be in operations of a school or principal cannot have this be used, this driveway, as the self-made connector road.
If a connector road's point of building it or showing it in a regional concept plan was to take the cut-through traffic off of Chatham, Garfield, and the streets as you get in town, and then you put a school off of it and you knock the speed down to 15 miles an hour instead of 40 to 50 miles an hour, then all that traffic's going to continue, all the commuting traffic's going to continue past this connector road, bypassing the purpose of it, and still take the in-town cut-through streets. Traffic's going to seek its, it's like water, it's going to seek its own level. It's going to take the path of least resistance. The commuting traffic's not going to go down the connector road that serves the school. They're going to continue in town and clog up 3 or 4 intersections and be over massacre.
I would think that regular traffic probably wouldn't, but a parent on the way to the turnpike to drop their kids off is most certainly going to do that. And that was my concern around the squiggly line road, that if we built it and it connected to Blake and Chantal, that it was just going to automatically turn into one of those crossover streets like King Street or, any of the streets that people take thinking that it's going to shorten their trip. It's just going to automatically become that for anyone coming through, dropping a kid, or coming through to pick up a kid to go somewhere else. And it's just natural. That's how it's going to happen.
Or you'd go to the subdivision on the southeast side.
Yep. Or on the other side if there's a road there. It's just it's just natural to try to
I mean, they
find
would literally
the
go to
shortest
that
path.
subdivision and say, please get out of the car and run across the field to the school. Having done that before. Sir, I'm sorry.
It's not to mention that, if we do a driveway from 112 through SMS, we have to buy back all that square footage of the driveway that we put in.
Yes. Yes, sir.
So anybody who has children in here that goes to SMS or has experienced that, end of the day, that's not exactly a picnic. I do want to thank Mr. Dupree in the back of the room who works in the transportation department. The other morning, Steve, myself, and Meg Parkhurst, we did a trial run of looking at what it would look like if we left the site, and we were able to pull off by, correct me, Patterson Farm, which we were right on the road, and we left at 7:45. Now, typically, 7:45 would be the drop time at the elementary school. We'd need to drive out the road, and I'm going to assume there's going to be a fair amount of traffic, so turning left out of that road would have taken us more than 0 minutes. During that run, we did a run down to Ferry Beach, to one of the endpoints towards Kinney Shores, down that way, and back. We rolled through Thornton Academy driveway. We stopped for a second, didn't unload any kids because we didn't have any kids on the bus, and kind of joined traffic back and came to SMS. We stopped for 0 kids on that route, and there was 20 or 21 stops that would have been made. 20 stops that would have been made, and the timing of that, without picking up kids, without increased traffic from parents that would definitely be using the access road, was 50 minutes and 19 seconds. That means that you're probably going to add at least another 20, so you're 110 on that piece. At the same time, what we haven't measured and what could be measured is knowing that we would need to have a 7:45 drop-off at the latest at that school, which would actually, if we were trying to make it work for middle school on an hour and 10, would have to be earlier. We would need to backtrack and look at the time that we would be putting a kid on the bus on Ferry Road to get there by, say, let's say 7:40-ish. We probably got we got kiddos on the bus at that situation at 6:45. So, I don't know what traffic will look like when we're going in that. All we can gauge upon is what was happening now. So, I suspect that if we have kiddos who are getting on the bus at 6:45, like many parents do already, and we have some buses that kiddos are getting on the bus at 6:50, they choose to drive.
Yeah, any other questions? Comments?
It's just a thought that we need buy-in from people in town, that's for sure. And I'm a person coming in here not knowing, their best location or anything. So I've heard a lot of negatives on the location, obviously, with the middle school. I mean, it just seems like it's overwhelming. What are the positives of that situation? In other words, is there an educational positive to having a campus? Because I think people need to be presented with the positives and negatives. I'm not so sure that in the zeal to present something to get moving on, that we're presenting a complete picture. That's my sense. And you, you do have to have buy-in from people in town, which is a good reason to have this tonight. But you're going to need a lot more of that because people do question, sometimes right, sometimes wrong. And I'm not sure I have the whole picture because there may be traffic problems associated with Route 1 in that area as time goes on too. And we haven't gotten into that. That could be a problem too. So we've got to think this through, I think.
Thank you very much, and hopefully I don't have to repeat that, but I think everybody heard. All great points, but we really have been working on this for close to a year, looking at all these different sites in more depth. And going forward, once we decide on a site, we're going to have to get into the technical aspects of the evaluation pretty quickly. Sir.
Like you said, we've been working on this for over a year, and there's a reason why Saco Middle School made the top 3, because there were positives. There are positives. Now, we have a whole forum here of everyone, including elected officials. There's a chance right now to speak to
I can take a stab at paraphrasing some of the things that I know were covered in some of the meetings that we had on the committee side, both from programming and from just site selection. And I'm going to lean on site selection committee people if I missed something or it transformed into something that I remember hearing, and it was ultimately something different. So the Saco Middle School site, number one, was because the city owns the land. Okay, that was a positive. It was available land in essentially a desert of suitable pieces of property to put a building and programming in this configuration anywhere in Saco. It's not like suddenly Leary Farm is going to become available tomorrow. That's just, there are no pieces of land. And that was one of the overwhelming reasons for it to be on the list, is because it is available and the city owns it. It had all of the power and utility access, albeit from Route 112, which then creates problems in and of itself. In terms of the things that were needed, you know, the size of the land, I mean, there was a matrix that was put together by the site selection committee that was used to rank the 20-something pieces of property that were looked at to put this in the top 3. And so that's essentially how this property came to be. From a programming standpoint, one of the concepts that we've kind of glossed over tonight is you see 2 buildings. The 2 buildings have complete grade levels in them. There's one of the things that was talked about very early on by the programming committee was the desire to no longer split grades in Saco, not have kids at the same grade level go to 2 completely different schools, potentially get 2 different experiences. And in the case of Fairfield and Young right now, we have an aging building that's a brick and mortar building, and we have an extremely aging building that's a bunch of modulars that are pretty much beyond their usable life. There's a very different experience in both of those buildings, and one of the reasons that these buildings are configured this way, where it's complete grades, is to try to solve that problem so that every kid in Saco at any given grade level has the potential to have the same experience. And so those are positives that are built into this that I know from from someone on the inside, if you will, because I was either in many of the committee meetings or I've attended a lot of the workshops. Some of that stuff was covered, and it wasn't covered tonight, and it's probably something that maybe we need to include just to make some of these images a little more meaningful to people. But those are some of the positive things that we've applied to this process to get to where we are. These top 3 truly were the top 3. I mean, there were other pieces of property available that had a lot of these things that were needed, but they either weren't available, or there were pieces of property that were available but then got sold. I mean, the real estate market is insane right now in southern Maine. And so things that you might think are available because you saw the sign, by the time anybody goes and asks, it's gone and it's a car dealership or something like that. I mean, it's been challenging to do that. So these are truly the 3 best that were out there. I think if a brand new site came along suddenly that was like the perfect site in the world, we would be starting this process all over again, and all of the doomsday predictions of it's going to take too long and we're going to get kicked off the list would come to fruition, because we wouldn't be able to do vernal pools on that in all likelihood. There would be traffic studies that probably wouldn't be able to happen, and the stars would not align on another piece of property. I mean, we truly are down to a situation where if we want to build a school in Saco, these are our 2 options. That's it. We had one that was on the list before this, but it's gone, and so unfortunately we have to move on from that. But these are our options right now to satisfy the programming choices that we're hoping to make and fitting something on a campus so that we can have some amount of maybe cross-pollination of staff that are separated by Main Street right now. I mean, try to cross Main Street in the middle of the day. It's difficult to just go get groceries. Trying to do that in the middle of the day when you're trying to go from one school to another, I mean, that's a challenge, and it's more than just busing. It's the whole program. And so trying to do this way where we have one building for an entire grade, that's intended to solve a lot of those problems. And so those are the, if you're looking for positives or the whys of why this, that's why.
I guess I'd also add, though, that, just for folks who haven't, for members of the public, and I've talked to a number of people, that are just intuitively, SMS makes sense. Like, just why aren't you building it at SMS? And so people who haven't been following it, I totally agree with your point. I mean, we need the community's buy-in, ultimately. And it's, there are a lot of technical reasons why SMS isn't a good fit. But a lot of people who aren't following the process, and then they come to the question or in the lead up to it, I think that your points are definitely valid, and I think we need to do better and talk some of that stuff through, because ultimately it is the citizens of Saco who have to make the choice. And I know from talking to people intuitively that for some, it makes sense to have a true campus. And then you got to explain this whole litany of reasons why, and that all makes sense to people. But at a high level, I've heard from a lot of people that, oh, well, SMS, that would be perfect. So I hear what you're saying, and I think that's definitely valid. Yeah.
I just want to make just one other point that I think one of the weaknesses in our community is it's not by purpose, but it works that way, because we're disjointed in this fact that we have a private school running part of the program, and we have, the rest of it, K through 8, done separately. And what comes to my head is that the communications is really important. So I don't know how that affects in this picture at all, of having a campus-style thing. I don't know. I do know that in other communities that they have done that. I know that where my son lives in Brookline, Massachusetts, they very much go to this campus-style kind of existence. But I don't know. I just don't know. But if people are going to ask that kind of question, what are the advantages of having a campus-style thing? Is it worth some of the other things? And people's intuitive notion, whether it's right or wrong, of what they like in terms of location. And so it's going to come up. And I don't have a point. I don't. But it just comes up that you can't make it simpler than it is. You run into problems. And we don't need that long term. That's
I love the SMS setup and that campus idea. But I think a lot of citizens don't want it at the cost of 9 to 15 million, whatever the costs are that seem so exorbitant compared to Claire. So the traffic issues may be there, there may be some at Claire, but that dollar figure just really freaks me out. So, to me, if it's very clear that this dollar figure, then Claire seems practical, and then from the top up, and all the coffee clutches and all the stores, everyone has to start talking positive of the decision that's made, so that everyone's communicating the reasons why. And if it is a 9 to 15 million, I mean, am I wrong? Is this not part of the dollar here? That there's so many more million dollars? So to me, that's what's going to have to be defined. And from the top down, whether it's the city council or the school board or neighbors at the corner store, that's where we have to communicate and talk about the reason why this was chosen. And it might be SMS that's chosen, whatever. Yeah, we pay the tax dollars, or whatever the decision is, it has to be throughout the city, communicated and educated. That's my opinion.
Thanks.
Oh, I don't want to breathe all over your beverage. Appreciate that. Thank you. Oh, sorry. I've been on this side of the microphone before recently, so thank you, Mr. Mayor, school board members, superintendent, ladies and gentlemen. I am Joe Gunn, Saco City Councilor for Ward 3. As I was invited here tonight along with my fellow councilors, it was informally as a workshop, even though that's not on the agenda. In the spirit of that, I like to submit my views as they stand at this time for the council, the school board, and the relevant committee's consideration. From the get-go, I have sought to honor the spirit of the process and the division of labor that was established. The process of planning a new school in whatever form it took. Personally, I felt the situation had too many cooks as it was, so why muck it up with my 2 cents, especially after the impression was given from the beginning that the school department wanted us on the council to stay out of the proceedings. In the spirit of wanting some process, really any process, after what has now been a full generation of fits and starts that up until recently added up to nothing for our kids and their parents, I was more than happy to keep my mouth shut if it helped our kids in any way to get to a new school. Now, it has been requested by the superintendent that the mayor and the council, quote, get on the record about the process that has been made so far, or lack thereof, depending on your perspective. I will respond based on the knowledge of the situation I have gathered by keeping this process at arm's length. First off, I'd like to make a brief comment about Sweetser. It would have been a perceived conflict of interest had I commented while the organization was still in the running, due to a family member being in a senior staff position, but now that they have bluntly rejected the school department's interest, I shall proceed. They have provided immeasurable service to the residents of this city over the years, and I hope that our beneficial relationship continues well into the future. I accept the unanimous decision of their CEO and board of directors not to go forward with the sale of their property, and I call on any members of the school community who have not done so to do so. A private entity has made its decision. It does neither the school department nor the city as a whole any benefit not to accept their decision, regardless of what hope for an alternative result was fostered by individuals in that organization that, as demonstrated, did not have the authority to speak for that organization as a whole. Which brings us to the matter of the proposed school construction site. My understanding is that officially the overall order for site preference, as stated by the players involved, are Sweetser, which is out, the Clare Parcels, and Saco Middle School. Only that really isn't accurate. The word out there is that the superintendent, I don't mean this personally, just as a matter of course, even at this juncture, is opposed to the SMS location that as it stands now, the Clare Parcels are the only place under serious consideration by the school department. If that is the case, is the purpose of this meeting simply for the superintendent to refute the arguments either in favor of Saco Middle School or another to be determined site in favor of Clare? If that is the case, I will state that I am not convinced that the location of a new school in the Clare Parcels is prudent for the long-term needs of Saco's families putting their children through the K through 8 grades or some combination thereof. Furthermore, I find arguments against the SMS site location based on what possibly an environmental impact study, which was never carried out, could discover to impede an effort towards choosing SMS, an argument that lacks both merit and calls into question if the site was ever seriously considered from the beginning. If that is the case, then why continue to hold it out as a legitimate choice when enough people supposedly back the preferred choice? I must come to the conclusion that a discussion was not sought, but rather a blessing from us, the council, the body that will ultimately decide if this goes to the voters. Now, while I do not believe that we should let the perfect be the enemy of the good, we should also not let the expedient become the enemy of the result. That was the cause of the Sweetser fiasco. I get it. After nearly 30 years, we all want this done. Some of us at all costs. I do not share that need to rush no matter how close on this we are. Now, I have an open mind. I am not convinced on Claire, and Saco Middle School is better than at what the residents have voiced previously in wishing to preserve the community school model, but both have their issues. That being said, I will remind everyone that the Saco City Council is not a rubber stamp. If the council is given something that makes no sense for the future of this city and its kids for the next 75 to 100 years, then voting it through in the name of expediency would be a grave mistake and a disservice to those who have sent us here. Thank you for your attention. I appreciate the time.
Thank you.
To Joe's point, I think it would be prudent to have a conversation like more detailed regarding timeline. We've talked about it kind of in general, but can we have a kind of a deep discussion about the timeline and what needs to happen? Because I think that might help clarify some things.
I also just would like to say, and just responding to you, Joe, not only as the superintendent of schools and as a parent and community member here, lived in Saco 15 years, have kids in the school system, that no, I've been 100% clear that the SMS would not be my preferred site for a school. And there's nothing, the mayor and I had a very spirited conversation at the end of last meeting where we've talked about how public officials, that it's very difficult to sit in the chair and go to several meetings that we've had. Been at Burns School, I think, twice, Fairfield School, and SMS, and we were working on the Sweetser piece, and the Sweetser, and the Claire, and the SMS. The matrix were laid out in all of those about what the order of preference of the working committees were. And in none of those meetings was SMS even talked about. Like, nobody in those meetings said, hey, I think SMS is the best site. So to go through that process of having a ranking, and certainly as a community member and a parent, you're going to have your own personal piece. We met as a program committee, and I look at Carrie a little bit, who's sitting over there, Carrie Lamoth, who's been a longtime teacher, and we talked about the benefits of having 1 through 5 in pre-K on the same site and making it seem still very elementary. We've talked about the value of those classrooms that were built and passed out behind SMS, and how we could be a community if we had a different site that could have outdoor education being part of our curriculum pre-K through 8. That seems exciting to me. I know that I've got a son who really loves that, the standards-based team at SMS, and would have loved it going through and looking at all of the science pieces that we have on that. I obviously jump to the logistics, and when I think about kids on a bus for an hour and 10 minutes and crossing in traffic and all of those pieces, I think that it's important that if elected officials here in the city have a preference, let's put it out on the table. We talked very greatly about a connector road. Is this about a connector road or a school? And if it's about a connector road and that solves a problem for the city, great. But there's a lot of work that we sent a letter to the city, to Patrick and to Brian, who I've been in great conversations with, that if that needs to happen, we need to have plans on the connector road, if that's the truth piece that we're trying to put across, so that then we can tailor the school design and construction to that road. Do we need to wait another 7 or 8 years? Our time, the Powerball ticket expires at that point in time. It is.
Enough.
It is a great gift. It is a great gift for us. No, I don't think it's unbelievable. When do communities have the opportunity to have $50+ million come from the taxpayers to support a school building? The list happens every 10 to 15 years. They used to in the past, when construction prices were much lower, they used to get down into a dozen, 16 schools. We're probably in the 8 to 10 range if we're lucky. A lot of that is because of the debt ceiling and the construction costs. If we're also talking about the SMS site, because this was the third choice, and we didn't have those discussions because with the Sweetser site, you didn't have a lot of conversation about the community, like the neighbors involved, because there's not a lot of housing and development in that piece. We have not had any conversations with the ward and the traffic concerns. Like, we need to reset and have some of those. That's going to take time because we just haven't had that discussion. We talk about the program piece, whether it be about fields that you would have to move and how does that impact the middle school. When we think about connector roads, and Rob always talks about buses going through and leaving things off and having parents that will want to bring kids to the elementary school and to the middle school at the same time. And I would look to my middle school principal and I would say, ooh, that would be really challenging for the school to start at 7:45 on the elementary side of things, knowing that if parents made one trip, they're probably not going to make two. So what happens with all of the middle school kids that are sitting in the cars? How does that leave us for coverage, for care, for walking, all of those pieces? So there's a lot of different pieces that go into this. And certainly from my experience of being a superintendent of schools and running schools for a while, there's one lens that you look through. There's a community member lens. We look at the cost lens that I know many taxpayers in this town are going to have concerns with. I'll go back to the same item that we talked about beforehand, is that we haven't even talked about programs and amenities outside of the building, which, again, I still say that a theater could be a very important piece for this community and for the school programming. All of those are additional add-ons. Fields, parkings, all of those spaces. Those are the real core things that's going to be great about building a school, not the site. We have to take into consideration all of the utilities, where the growth is, what it's going to look like, how we're going to get there, how we're going to get back. And so, no, my job is not to pick the site. That's their job. Certainly, as superintendent of the schools, enjoy running schools, enjoy being part of that process. As a community member and the superintendent, excited to get this going. We've spent, I started a year ago that July, and we started almost immediately meeting with the state. You mentioned how many false starts this has had. I think it's incumbent on each and every one of us here in this room not to have any more false starts. We need to complete this, figure out where it's going to be. But if they're going to be in certain pieces of the neighborhood, or if we're looking to accomplish certain things, we have to put that on the table and have those discussions and do it right. If we're looking at a connector road, and I know that, well, yeah. If this is about a connector road in traffic, we got to figure that out. Like, I need to know, how long is it going to take to do this? How long is it going to take to do this? What do we have for land? We don't have the land right now. We don't have the land.
Mr. Mayor, first, really quick. Oh.
Thank you. I'm coming up to the microphone because I've been getting texts from my wife saying she can't hear people. So,
wise decision.
For those who don't know, I'm Jim Purdy. I'm the city councilor for Ward 2. I have a couple of questions. I'll save those for the end. First of all, I just wanted to say thank you for this evening. Been a lot of good information presented, and I really, really wish we had done this a lot sooner. But, as Joe Gunn had said, I have stayed pretty much as far away from this as possible, simply because my daughter works for Sweetser, so to avoid any appearance of anything inappropriate. the questions I have are, if I understood what was being said earlier, and it's obvious that there's going to be some land acquisition involved in either of these scenarios. If I remember the number right, you said that it was probably going to be about 20 acres with the SMS site? Ballpark? Okay. And I don't remember the acreage of the land that would have to be bought for the Claire parcels. Does anybody have any idea? Okay. So, I mean, in the same... Okay. That you would have, that we would have to acquire. Yeah. All together would be. Okay. All right. 21. Thank you. And just the other question was, you were discussing the busing, and you had timed from SMS for the pickup and drop-off. I was just curious if you had done the same for the Claire parcels? Or
No.
are you assuming that it would probably be the same as what Squeezer was?
So it would be very similar to what the Sweetser site was. One of the pieces that makes it a little bit more interesting when you think about transportation from any of the, the Sweetser site or from the Claire site or the SMS site, is the biggest challenge is that now you're taking all of your pre-K through 5 kids, and everybody from this part of town now needs to cross Main Street, go up to that area, and then for that second run, go back. So the other day when I talked about the run that we did with Steve, is that from the side of the road at Patterson's Farm, not counting a driveway, and getting to where we would turn to go through the lights. We went through the lights down here on Main Street, by where you would turn to go to Burns. 12 minutes. 12 minutes just for that, with no driveway, no additional traffic, no turning left outside of that school. So what part of the difference is that in either of the other 2 sites, whether that was Sweetser and or Claire, you're not bringing that traffic across Main Street, across Route 1, and then having to go back, because those buses from either side of town would converge on that site, be able to stay pretty much and return quickly to their portion of that piece. The other piece that was a little bit, when you think about the circulation flow, if you think of where Sweetser was with Claire, is that for some buses, you would quickly continue to go to Route 1, hit Flag Pond Road, head into North Saco. You would have other buses that would probably go directly straight across the road through the industrial park piece and service that young school piece of town. What I think would be interesting as you think about Ferry Road piece, is would you continue down Route 1 and take a left kind of before Hannaford's and head into parts of Old Orchard that way to hit the big distance? Or you could jump on the spur into Old Orchard and come back across, which probably I think that would be faster, and Steve and I, we can take another morning and do some of that work. But there would also be a large part of our buses that pick up off that Route 1 kind of behind Dairy Queen would continue down 1 and hit there. Now, also in all of these, you have to think about the timing of dropping off at Thornton Academy and then getting back to your next site. So there's a lot of different pieces when you look at the transportation piece of how you make that work. Because if we have rides that are an hour and a half, an hour and 10 minutes to an hour, we will have to look at spreading that time enough for start and stop of the school day. And whether parents want, there are always problems with that. Do I anticipate that we would have more bus drivers based off the last several years of the availability for any school in the nation to get bus drivers? No, I don't think that you can come out of this decision and say, oh yeah, we're going to add 7 bus routes because we barely have the ability now to fill what we have.
Thank you. And just one other observation. I'm really happy to see that the both plans, and whichever way this goes, includes 2 schools with full grades. The K and the pre-K and K, and then the 1 to 5. That was something that had concerned me as far as other options that had been laid out. So, thank you.
Thank you. Kevin?
Yeah, just to come back to why are we meeting tonight? The purpose of this meeting is basically a reset from a previous meeting where we took the information that came back from the committee that they had ranked and made a decision on which property we thought was the one that we wanted to move forward with as a school board. So that one is no longer available, so we have to do it all over again. These 2 being the 2 is basically the purpose of this meeting, is to go through that all over again.
I had a question. Regarding the SMS site, what would be the costs associated with doing the testing that needs to be done? And could we do testing simultaneously at both sites? And actually, in addition to that, if say the SMS site proved itself, I don't know if it works this way or not, but you start doing the testing and it's clear that it's just not going to, money-wise or just environmentally not be doable. I mean, could you stop the testing and kind of just, just have it bear that out? I mean, I think you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, yes, I do. So just to be clear, when we narrowed it down to 3 sites, we negotiated with the state to allow us to do vernal pool testing on all 3 sites. They only usually allow you 1, maybe 2. But we wanted to take a look, because vernal pool testing has to be in April. There's some magic night when all the frogs get together and you have to catch that specific night to do the vernal pool testing. And so we did it on all the sites. And we did take a hard look at those sites and a couple more that had significant problems from a traffic standpoint or whatever. And we did have wetland testing available on Clare. We didn't do that on Clare because it was already available. The city had some. We would have to redo that. And we would have to do the same thing on SMS as far as wetlands. We did walk both of them, and I said this before, and I mean it frankly. When we first got invited to help the city with the project, I really liked the Saco Middle School site. I thought it would be great to have a campus there, but the more we tried to squeeze in all the programs, especially with 2 buildings, onto that site, and stay away from the power lines and stay away from the wetlands out back. We didn't have the wetlands testing, but if you've ever walked out back, you can kind of have a sense of where they are. And then there's quite a bit. But the biggest problem we had was being able to get there from Route 5. And honestly, when that came off the table, that was the big deal.
Yeah, from what I'm hearing, there's a lot of uncertainty regarding SMS. And, if we wanted to try to move along with SMS, like how long would we be spinning our wheels, like trying to figure out if, the road from 5 and,
We've been working on that for quite a while. I mean, honestly, because we really did take a hard look at all 3, and we've had an awful lot of meetings with a lot of people that are here at the meetings, and we didn't take it lightly as far as the direction we were going with Sweetser. nor with Claire. I mean, honestly, I was not a big fan of the idea of Route 1, but once we saw how do we get off Route 1 to get to it, and you can come back out through the industrial park to get out of there, we came up with a solution that would make it safer. And the site is it's a lot flatter. I mean, it's just a much more buildable site than MS. And so if you've been to the middle school, the ball field's out back, which would have to be replaced someplace.
Another uncertainty, just not knowing that you could repurchase the land too that you would use going in, but.
Right. I mean, assuming that we could buy the land from Star Homes and it's about 20 acres, we could probably make it work. But that's a big deal to replace that. And just taking the program away, and we have staff members whose kids have gone through Saco schools and they're fortunately grown but still live here in Saco. The idea of losing those fields that close to the Saco Middle School was a real problem from a program standpoint. So there was a question why we're still looking at the middle school site. It's because we were asked to, and look at it hard because we want to make sure we get a vote for this project, whatever that vote is.
I'm getting the sense from you, at least what I'm hearing, that if we were to continue seriously looking at SMS, we're not going to like what we're not going to. That's just the sense that I get from you.
I think we're already there. I mean, honestly, I was really disappointed we couldn't go there because I really did like the idea of a campus.
But you're under the opinion that it's not worth kind of taking a deeper dive into at this point. This is what I'm.
I don't think so. And right now, if we, if a connector road was already in and we could attach to it, maybe. But your question before was about timeline. The timeline, the bond happens when the school is already designed and you've got a contractor with a price and you've agreed to it. That's when the bonding happens. It's going to be 2.5 years to build the building. It's going to be about 15 months to go through the permitting and doing concept design. So we can't really do full-on concept design until we know what the site is.
The other thing I gathered from you is even if we wanted to move forward with SMS is that we would go to the state and we wouldn't have everything that we would need to move forward. So then where does that leave us,
Right, and we've talked to the state about SMS and made a strong argument in both directions. And the biggest issue that we heard from them was the connector road or not a connector road or the $15 million road to the school. I mean, there was a lot of pushback on this. But the other thing you mentioned about the middle school, as much as I like it, the amount of grade change out back. So if you follow the fields, which have already been narrowed down, and they're already flattened.
Well, you mentioned there'd have to be some sort of, I don't know what it's termed, hill mitigation or whatever. I'm sure there's costs associated with taking that land and changing the grade of it.
Where we're showing the green there on the site is amazingly hilly. And there's wetlands that you can just walking through, you're going to see it. We're not showing it there because we haven't done the analysis yet. But there are wetlands in there. So you'd be in order to get away from some of that, you'd have to go back and steal the fields, which is actually going to take away program for the middle school. So I wouldn't want to go any further than the practice field because in order to fit on here, because that's really going to mess up your program educationally, for not just ball games afterwards, but phys ed. So it's a big deal.
And bottom line, I mean, we've got these 2 sites and that's it. I mean, it's not like we have anything else. So I'm looking at this logically. I don't know. Seems like Claire is, the best choice. I mean,
I'd have to agree with you, and just from a technical standpoint, we really have, and it might not feel like it, but we've been working on this a long time, and we took a look at all 3 as hard as we could, and when it was decided to go with the one that we're not going with anymore, we spent some more time. But whatever had to be done to move forward, like the vernal pools, we did for all 3 sites, actually a 4th site. And the other thing, as far as traffic, we'd have to do that before November. The DOT is a cutoff date.
Are there any particular, pitfalls that we could run into as far as the Claire site's concerned? Get going, all right, we're going to do this site, and then we're moving along, and then all of a sudden something just,
We don't envision any. we would try to get a level one site evaluation, environmental review right away. And we've actually, yeah, so we get a proposal for both, but we already are on that, because again, when that first option went away, we scrambled, because we don't want to.
Again, looking at this completely objectively, I mean, I don't know how you can look at it any other way. I mean,
Right, right. I mean, just look at that big field out behind SMS, and you say, why couldn't we build it out there? Well, when you look at the steep slopes and what you have to do with the federal government and with the program with both buildings going in there and how big the buildings and site components and parking are, it just doesn't fit.
I just one last comment. I mean, wherever we put a school, it's going to be a benefit to the community. You know, whether it's at wherever it is. I mean, it's going to be a benefit to Saco. So,
Absolutely.
You know,
Yeah,
to not have it would be
we look forward to that.
yeah.
Sorry. I was hoping to have you kind of the last slide of the, just to make it show the comparison of the two properties. Somebody had made a beautiful, that's it, a beautiful spreadsheet, just to kind of give you a visual. I'm a visual person. I like to see things. So just, I don't know if, it seems like we've rehashed most of what's on there, but I don't know if there's any points we've missed.
Can everybody read that? I'm not a big fan of death by PowerPoint, but I can read it if you want. So the Saco Middle School, okay, so the city owns all the property necessary to fit the program for the pre-K, K, and 1 through 5 schools. Saco Middle sites, no, and Portland Road is also no. So we need to buy some land for both, probably about the same amount of square of acreage. Wetland mapping has been performed. No for Saco Middle School, yes for what we call the Clare site. It's actually, the city purchased a whole bunch there's a lot of different lots involved with that. The significant vernal pools have been delineated on the site. Yes, for the Saco Middle School. There were none on the, no significant ones on the Clare site, but there was a big one out back in the middle school. Straightforward access, drive, location options, no on the Saco Middle School, and yes on the the 91 Portland Road. Environmental site assessment performed, no and no. Steep slope mitigation required to develop the school. Saco Middle School is yes. And the Clare site is no. There's some steep grades out behind, but not where we put the school. And the stream crossings required at access driveways. The middle school is yes, and the Clare site is no.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Sir?
So just two kind of final questions from me. I guess this process has always kind of seemed peculiar to me in that, at least with Claire now, that property owner seems to have a lot of leverage over us. And after this discussion of SMS, in terms of the price that they set. Now, I understand that you had mentioned that there's an appraisal and the state will pay up to the appraisal, but the seller doesn't have to sell it for the appraised value, right? And
yes.
whatever that difference is, the city will make up.
If they choose to.
Right, exactly. And so I guess kind of following along on the timeline and next steps with that, you had mentioned in November, we're going to try to do, by November, there's going to be a traffic study.
Yes.
And then the environmental work is happening now or ASAP.
Yes.
So on the real estate transaction portion of it, what is the next step there? And if that falls through, are we saying now that we're not going to do SMS and we've just lost all this money?
Well, I think
or what?
one of the options that nobody seems to want to think about is if with the Claire site, we have a right-of-way to the site that the city owns. So the Claire site, additional land makes it better for us. But if we didn't have that, we could easily put a single school there. And we could potentially put another school on the other side of the stream. I would rather not do that. But it's conceivable you could do that. On the middle school site, you could also put a single building there and not be as crowded with everything going on, but you still need to have an access point from the back.
So we do have options.
I think we do.
If we don't
I think we do.
come to an agreement with the price on the
Yes.
property, those 20 acres that we need to acquire
Yes.
at Claire. Yeah, okay.
Yes, sir.
So the vernal pool testing has not been done on the Claire site, and you were talking about that being done in April.
No. It has been done. And the reason it says no is because we didn't find any.
Oh, okay. And does that include the property that we would be purchasing?
Yes.
Perfect.
True. Yes.
Superintendent Ray.
To Will Gale's point, one of the pieces, though, that I will advise you as superintendent of schools is if you have to put two elementary schools on separate sites, the transportation piece of that will create another challenge because you're going to be busing kids from both sides of town and have to kind of hop. That will have to be done very creatively to get back out there. That would be a challenge too.
I was going to say that would be worse than it is right now because they'd be even further away than the schools are right now. Right? If you had schools on different properties, different parts of town. Right now they're like a straight shot.
Yeah.
You add in another direction and it's
Well, you take Burns out of play, theoretically.
right.
What becomes the piece, Sarah, is that if those other two sites were very far apart, that would be the challenge. If you were like within a mile or so, in reasonable traffic, that's probably not that big of a deal.
Saco doesn't have reasonable traffic unless it's 4 a.m., right?
Exactly. But one of the pieces that we've talked with, in both of these scenarios is Rob and I have had a lot of discussions about what drop-offs would look like. Are there ways that you kind of, like on this one, you kind of see like it almost looks like a racetrack. Do you have the ability to drop at one school and then kind of pull forward and drop kids, and actually the people who would be in the front would do kind of a lap around? Because one of the things that I really dislike is when you see kids kind of loading buses and heading backwards. You really want to kind of keep as much of that in front of you as you possibly can versus going backwards. So that's something about that style of bus drop-off that I really like.
Along the lines of busing, I've always been a fan of the SMS location because of the community aspect, the campus style. I don't like either Sweetser or Claire because of the industrial aspect, no walkability, those types of things. But when I look at the Claire parcels now, knowing that that's first on the list, do you think that going forward, there potentially could be a decrease in personal drop-off, which is going to relay an increase in extra transportation? Because I look at the Claire and its location, are parents going to be willing, and now, especially knowing that there could potentially only be a right turn onto Route 1, or going through the commercial aspect of Millbrook to get out, they're either going to have to continue forward to Scarborough to the turnpike or backtrack all the way to Saco to the turnpike. There could be a potential in decrease of parents saying it's not worth it on their time because of the inconvenience of the distance to the turnpike access. And even going down the Industrial Park Road to come back up, you're still, I don't see that aspect of it working in transportation-wise.
And so I see this as, transportation-wise, as a better alternative, because again, as you look at the SMS piece, and you're thinking about elementary schools, and based off the access we have now, because there is no connector road or plan to go through, you're running all of that back towards Route 5, which means that if you were getting to the interstate from there, now you've got to weave through all of those side streets, and then for any of us who, like I live on Skyline, and going to the interstate is not exactly the most fun experience. Or if you live on Skyline and now you have to go to SMS where you kind of go out and you got to turn left, that's not exactly a fun experience at 5 o'clock during trying to get your kid to practice. So I don't see that piece. I actually think this makes it pretty easy, because your traffic who is going to go to Portland at 7:45 in the morning is probably just going to turn right, continue up through, and go through Scarborough. That would be my guess. If you were going, or if you needed to go south towards the interstate, you'd come through Millbrook. You'd have a light right there that would get you straight across by the Jeep dealership, and you would hop out and jump right on the interstate after, a mile through the industrial park. So I actually think that piece is probably going to be a little bit better. So I currently, in Bedford, as you know, have 3 elementary schools, 2 elementary schools on the street, and one of those, and the middle school is on that street, which is in an industrial park. And our traffic goes 2 ways there. It's the people who are heading back into town, and they head out towards West Street, and then the other large group of people who go through the industrial park and go right across Route 1 and go immediately to the interstate. So I would see this piece as that happening, where people would come out of Millbrook, go right across and hit the interstate that way. I think you also look at 7:45 a.m. in the morning, and probably the traffic going back into Saco on Route 1 is not that heavy right now. So the traffic from Scarborough to Saco is not that heavy in the morning time. So if you did take a left right there, you're probably pretty quickly getting to the interstate that way too, and jumping on right before Hannaford's, right there by Aroma Joe's, and you'd be looking at light at Millbrook, light at the movie theater, and then a light right there by Gorham Bike and Ski, and then your right-hand turn to the interstate, which could take you in several different locations. I actually think that's probably going to be pretty quick in the morning time. Whereas in the situation at SMS, I don't know that that's going to be quick in either way, because if you're going to come out a 1.5 mile road, if that's one option, to hit 5, then you're going to funnel everything from 5 into those smaller side streets. If you come out the other direction, you know that you're going to have 112 traffic. Now, there could be an exchange there. We don't know what that would look like and what that will do for traffic, but that would be another situation as well. I think one of the pieces that will be a major player is anyone who has older kids. What happens with those kiddos? Do they come? Do they not go? I don't know that it will push more people toward busing either way. I just think those times have changed. Like, I don't know that parents and families are going to make that decision to stop transporting their kiddos to school. It seems something pretty ingrained in, I've had 5 or 6 years of dropping off at Young School, and even
In the
And,
Not,
yeah.
now it's in a straight shot, you can drop one, either Fairfield, Burns, Young, whatever in the middle. But if you've got two separate, one of them would have to.
But I think even though where it's a straight shot now, by the time you're dropping off at Young School, you've got another 45 minutes before your middle school kid's coming to school. And if parents are taken to work, I think we see our ridership. If you look at, actually, we're talking about transportation a little bit later, and where our highest bus totals of kids registered are actually with middle school and high school kids versus elementary kids.
Any other questions, comments? I believe we should move on to item 3C, which is next steps.
That's what I was going to ask, if you were going to do that.
Superintendent Ray, what are the next steps that need to be done, or maybe Rob from Oak Point, next steps to be completed or studies to be completed? Number 1C1, or I should say 3C1, or 3C2, site selection and timeline. Do we want to talk about those?
Sure, I can talk about it briefly. We just want to get going on one of the sites. It's just, there's an awful lot of work to do. So the next steps are to know where we're going. And if we can do that, then we can get back on track and meet the goals of the state and the people with kiddos to get the school done sooner. If we're going to look at two different sites and we need to get going on those, the state's not going to support that, so it's additional cost that somebody's going to have to approve with consultants and wetland studies and that sort of thing. But if we go to, I think we go to SMS, and I know we don't want to just rush into things, but I'm not sure if we have a good solution that we're rushing into things. So I think it would just be good if we can continue. The state's giving us a little bit of a breather, but they want us to meet our goals or go on to the next school. So that's kind of the next step, is to hopefully if somebody besides me decide on which school we're going to go, which site it's going to be.
Superintendent Ray, are you looking for a vote from the school board to choose a site like the school board did with the Sweetser parcel, or are you just?
I think that until we answer some of the questions, certain things are not going to go away. If the school committee picked a site tonight, I'm not sure everybody in this room is going to be happy. But we had conversation that there's definitely still some energy from people about SMS. And Rob in Oak Point can't design a building unless we know if that's a driveway or a connector road. Can't do it. It looks different. Right now it's neither. It's a $15 million road going through the easement that we have. So unless we have land, or if we know that it's going to be a road or a driveway, we can't even move forward on that site. So that there has to be some discussion about what it is going to be. If people want to really consider that site as the alternative, we have to have some direction from whatever the body that it is of what we're dealing with. Because there are very different designs that would have to take place, which would lead us into, if it's a road, Rob and his team needs to set that school back further, which means we have to go up and look at more ball field, which means we have to have a site for ball field to go. If it's just a driveway, you might take a different approach. You may have a land or property owner that has a very different feeling if we're approaching this again, to ask them to say, we're looking for a road or we're looking for a driveway. We need to figure out what we're going to do if that's in consideration anymore.
If we're looking at just a driveway, we still have to bring the utilities in from 112.
Yep.
So that's still going to affect the land buyback. Correct?
And I'm assuming that you probably would also want some sort of access road for between the two buildings based off fire trucks, police, deliveries. So that impacts that piece as well.
So it might not be an access road or a Route 5, 112 connector, but there's still going to have to be access to full schools from Route 5.
I think from a safety standpoint, that would definitely be required. You're probably just not going to have a field in between with no ability to get there. You would also be thinking about, you'd need to think and plan about Ryan's Parks and Rec crew and Public Works crew of any work that they would need to get in between those buildings for mowing. So that would also be additional square footage that we would have to meet into a purchase. At the same time, just thinking about, Rob calls it program, but thinking about our middle school, phys ed, athletics, Little League, all of those pieces that access those fields. When you think about, I know that there's plenty of fields and you can always make more fields, but I know that when my kiddos are up there in the springtime doing Little League, both fields are full and youth lacrosse is down on the backfield doing practice. So there's a lot of moving parts that would need to be part of purchasing another piece of land.
Tim?
So my suggestion was basically going to be that we do what the process has, kind of dictated that we do. The building committee, site selection, and programming have put forth some recommendations that they scored already in terms of their viability for, fitting the concept that we want. And that's what we started off with the last time, and that's how we ended up arriving at Sweetser, because that was the one that was at the top of everyone's list. So I think we really have, what's left before us is starting with the matrix that was, it's not up there now, but the one that was in that presentation. That's the starting point of the pros and cons of the two sites that we have left. And we really have to just look at it from the standpoint of the data that we have. Okay, both sites, city-owned, but require additional land purchases. One more probably than the other because of the fields. We have both sites that have power. One is more challenging to get to than the other. I mean, we basically are down to looking at the data that we've been presented and making a decision based on that. I mean, the off-ramps are, from this process, we come to a conclusion of a site and a configuration that we want to put forth, and that goes to the voters. They vote yes or no. Yes, we get a school. No, we get no school. If we drag our feet more and hope for data or land that isn't going to appear and lose our opportunity, the only path is no school. So we have all the pieces of information we need to make a decision right now, and I'm comfortable having a further discussion about which of these rises to the top as having the most merit, but I don't think waiting for additional information to come along for either a third site to appear or one of these to float to the top more so than it may have already is coming. I just don't. I mean, time is of the essence. I mean, I can't be any clearer than that. This is a dire situation if we don't feel like we can make a decision about this. We're talking about a school construction process that we get help from the state, or it's on our dime, all of it. Not a little bit, all of it. And so, I mean, we really need to look at this with open eyes and understand that this is a tremendous opportunity. Okay, it doesn't come by again. This is our opportunity to do something to solve building problems that we have in town and a whole host of other problems. And we can't just keep sitting around waiting.
Any further comments?
Just to follow up on what Kevin was saying, yes, a matrix, but I believe for me, separating myself as a resident and as a counselor, I think a matrix of cost is what it's going to come down to right now. Neither site is perfect. They both have their issues, whether it's traffic, whether it's access, neither site is perfect. So what it's going to, the information that I've gotten tonight, I want to see cost. What is, if we did SMS, putting the road in, the numbers that Director Fox gave us, 15 million, 9 million. Okay, we have to buy property on both sides. What, let's get the cost of the properties. That's what it's going to come down to. Because again, neither site, at this point right now with the information tonight, but you're right, it's a dire situation and we need a school. There's no way around it. What is the city gonna, let's find the solution that's gonna cost the city less.
Okay. How do you want to proceed?
Well, we know I love a good spreadsheet, so we can put some colors on that too, Rob, green, red. I do want, I hear what you're saying, 100%, because I kind of think that way a whole lot too, because from the beginning of all of the 27 sites, there was never the same, the initial picture that you have in your head wasn't these. I'll be very clear, it wasn't for me, and I'm not sure it was for any of those, because you all have this idea that you're driving into the middle of town, there's a 40-acre field, and it's wide open, and the sun's shining, and we have a picture like we had of Burns School on opening night with a rainbow. That was what you want. I think one of the pieces, you have road to consider here. You also, the piece that I would want to connect with Rob, but I'm pretty sure that when we take some of the park site, that there's no way we're going to get money back for that piece of land from the DOE to purchase that. I don't.
I really can't say. I mean, we'd have to, it would be a struggle, but as far as buying the additional land, I just don't know. But just in short numbers, you don't have to do a road over Clare, and depending on which number you look at, it's $10 million or $15 to $20 million more than to build the middle school without the disruption. I just think you're going to have a lot of disruption. As much as I like that initially, if you take away some of the fields, you're going to disrupt the program, and how you're going to use the middle school forever is significant.
The other piece that, certainly we can put something together. People have to understand their estimates. But one of the more difficult pieces in all of this is that if you're looking to do two projects, which I think that very clearly our committees thought about the equity for all situation. You were at some of those and others were, we thought about equity for all to make sure that it was different. When you also look at the middle school site and think about what may be paid for from the state in either of these situations and may be local, we also probably going to have to consider the considerable more groundwork for the slope fill and cut at the middle school site that may be very difficult for us to estimate. But I'm sure Rob and his team can do it.
You certainly do it, but without actually designing the school, it's going to be fuzzy math. So we will certainly do that. We'll do whatever you want. And we could make either site work, but I just want to make sure that if you're looking at actual numbers, I think the state's going to be contributing between $50 and $65 million by the time we're done on this project.
Is that a question for the superintendent or for Oak Point?
Yeah, I'd like an answer too.
I have a theoretical answer. So the question, if I can, don't paraphrase this the right way, correct me, is would utilizing the Saco Middle School site as part of a campus limit our ability to make changes to Saco Middle School? Is that what you asked? Okay, and so where this project and the concepts that were put together don't touch Saco Middle School at all right now. There's nothing that's directly being done. However, and here's my theory question that I have is, would it be easier in the long run if we were to utilize state funds to build the majority of that project on our ability to do stuff with Saco Middle School? Would it be easier if we utilized the state funds to help us with this project versus not doing any of that and then we build a school on our own and then think we're going to end up being able to do Saco Middle School? I think just knowing how, budgets go from time to time over the years, I would think that if we were to assume we're just going to do this all on our own and build these other schools, that we're going to be right back where we've been in the past where, we just don't have the money available to do some of those things. It's one of those theoretical questions. I can't say that that's truly what it is, but I think that the assistance from the state to help us build this concept helps us in the long run by relieving pressure that we would have on our budget around facilities.
What I'm wondering is by putting these buildings physically in this spot, will it impede our ability later, let's say we wanted to expand Saco Middle School?
I think the fields would probably be more of the hindrance than whether these buildings are there.
The other piece that's important to know about the Saco Middle School site, and we've talked about it, and we kind of focused on the fields, but everything, including parking, except for that building, is under the land conservation piece. So anything that you do, like Marie and I and Patrick and Ryan and I, it's like, okay, how do we even do a bus loop? Around, like, could you do a bus loop to improve traffic? Or, like, we would run into some problems with doing that. So anything that happens on that site has to be replaced somehow, which will always be a challenge, no matter what we do. I would also just, to get back to your question, is that the best point of reference that I could give you about cost is that for Biddeford High School, which was locally funded, was about $35 million. That added about $1 to the mill rate when that went through. That would be my best history from the past.
Okay. So it looks like we'll continue the discussion to the next meeting with some numbers coming from the superintendent's office. That's my understanding of where we are. And the site selection committee will continue to do their hard work at their meetings.
So is it possible to have that in time for whatever our next meeting is in a couple of weeks?
Superintendent Ray, would it be possible to have some cost estimates by the September, 28th meeting?
Well,
So
Patrick,
I'm asking Jeremy, but I'm kind of looking at Rob because I think that's where the numbers are
Patrick's
coming
got his
from.
hand up for a second.
I have a feeling the city's going to get turned to say, what are the connector roads, like these cost projections, that mile and a half road to serve the grades and slopes and stream crossings involved with that road has 4 major stream crossings. If you go that Route 5 road, it's actually shown on the concept right now. Those could be anywhere from $200,000 to $1 million for each of them.
I was gonna say, can you do worst case scenario? Like the highest projection, just to be like, oh, it's gonna be 4 million for that, but then in reality, it comes out to like 3.2, and we're like, hey, so.
Range with some assumptions that were made to get there, but just the problem with those broad assumptions are they can be easily spun either way and made to look like it's something it's not. But the level of assumptions going to be made is
What's the cost of building out, or getting a price for now and building it 5 years from now, your cost, just from when you did it a few years back, went up, what, $4 million, $5 million? I mean, what you're projecting today isn't gonna be the same 5 years from now. So you're gonna be looking at more costs up and woods and beyond what you already got on the table. So, I mean, this doesn't make sense, not for what you're getting out of the process. And like I said, we fought hard to make sure that we could get state funding for this project. We put our necks on the line when I was on council for that. And we took a lot of grief because everybody kept saying, no, you're not gonna get this because we're too rich a community. Well, we finally got on the list. Let's not blow it. And all I'm hearing in here tonight is a lot of anticipation on how we're gonna lose this funding. And we shouldn't be thinking of it that way. I've sat in here for too long already, I'm going home, but I had to get this out, because like I said, we took a lot of grief for 4 years when I was on council, trying to push this off, saying that we were gonna wait for state funding. It's time to move on this.
Yeah, I wholly second that from former Councilor Greenway. But along the same lines that Pat or Director Fox was speaking on, I think that if what I just heard is potentially this site committee being tasked with continuing to explore SMS. Maybe I heard that wrong, but that's what I thought I heard. And I think that if that's the case, then somebody needs to be coming up with more funds for the site committee, because as it's been pointed out by Oak Point, they have a limited amount of funds to do this, and they're not going to be able to now go and do the other studies that haven't been done without potentially the city funding it. So I would suggest that we had done with the sidewalk previously down on Ferry Road, if the councilors were here that believe further explore it, then that needs to come from council and not from this school board or the superintendent.
Just to throw it out. So if we had a road on the back of a napkin 4 years ago that cost $9.6 million, and this one's 50% longer, and I would say it's gonna be $15 to $20 million differential between the site on Route 1 and the back of SMS. Without even running the numbers, we have enough numbers to look at. If the building was the same to build in both spots, I think it would actually be cheaper or clear. But if the building was the same, the differentiator is that road. And the road is gonna be $15 to $20 million. So there's your wild ass guess, excuse me.
So it sounds like the differentiator is the road plus the complexity of that site. I mean, there's not as much with the Clare parcel. It's flat, it's fairly easily accessed, and we don't have to replace anything to use it. We have to buy land, but we don't have to, then go through a federal process to determine whether or not the piece that we want to put something else on is acceptable to them. So, I mean, it seems to me like the Clare site is the clear front runner just because it is less complex to work with.
Any other comments?
One role Oak Point doesn't have is to talk to these butters. And I think it was school member Gail's point about leverage if we came out of this saying we're only going after Clare. SMS still has to be on the table, just in case something happens like the Sweets. That's to me that's a given. As a site committee member, SMS stays. I mean, it's just got to stay on.
Mr. Mayor, just a point of clarity. So for the purpose of this evening's discussion, we absolutely have 2 sites, but when we get to handing something off to the state, we're only going to give them 1 site. That's the process. And so I think that's where the gray line is with a lot of people around, well, what are we really talking about? I mean, the process requires us to present a concept and a site. It's not a concept and pick your favorite of 5. It's, we have to go to them with something fairly concrete, and that's why we're kind of trying to hone in on 1.
Forgive me if this has been asked, but when are we doing a straw poll on this, or are we at some point going to vote to move forward with Claire or SMS? What are you hoping for?
We're going to probably do that at the next meeting because we're just discussing needing some numbers.
So
Okay.
we go back to, we have to make a decision on site at some point, because then you do have to go to a straw poll of the public, and then we have to go to the State Board of Education on just the site, and then we have to separate the decision on program, building, because when you think about the building piece, there's also going to be some costs there, because there are going to be some things that you might want a little more square footage on, or you might want this, or you might want that. So that will not necessarily all get paid for by the DOE, and that has to be part of a discussion. I think what's pretty hard to talk about in all of these, and you kind of got to come out of here with 2 sites still, because you got to do work on all. But if we're doing work on our side on all sites, if SMS is going to be part of the consideration, there's a lot of things that have to happen on that side. Has to be a decision about driveway or connector road, because Rob can't, and his team can't design the building without that, because it impacts many different pieces of now how much extra land you have to put, where do you go, how close are you going to be to property lines, slopes, all of those pieces. That's a piece that the city side would need to really determine and be part of, because school department can build a driveway to a school, but we certainly can't just build a road. And so there has to be other discussions that are going on. If that's going to continue to be on the table, there has to be some discussions that leads us to an ability that if it's the choice, we know what we're dealing with. Does that make some sense?
Jim?
Bottom line here, what are we looking at for a deadline? I mean, I can't speak to the school board's process, but I know once it hits the city council, it takes at least a month to go through new business and the 3-meeting process. So
I think we actually, when we started to look at the timeline, because of the way the city charter, and we laid that out at a meeting a while ago, the city charter has a really difficult, long timeline to get it. It was like it was almost a 3-month period that we started to have to go through for you guys to do it so we could get it onto the ballot. And
what are we looking at for a deadline for a decision on the site?
so it's different parts. So once there's a site decision, we then say the board votes on a site. Then you got to do straw poll. And then you're a couple of months out to get to state board. Hope that state board goes well. Still a lot of studies to do before we can go to the state board, and by not having a decision on the site, we don't want to waste that money to do those. And then, after the state board, we're going to be 3 or 4 months anyway designing the building, because you have to have concept approval. At some point in time, we're struggling to hit next November.
And get it on the ballot for next November.
Correct.
Right.
Next November, we're starting to struggle to get that too. But all of those pieces come back to, if SMS is on the table, we have to have some clear details of connector road or driveway. We have to know that.
School Board Member Archie?
So to go along that thought process, do we have an answer for 3B, the letter for 3B? Have we heard anything back?
I think Director Fox kind of gave you the outline in his comments of that answers to the questions on that letter when he spoke earlier. I think we hashed over the questions of that. But if you have a direct question, feel free to go ahead and ask that.
I was hoping for something a little more formal, but I get what you're saying.
I'm sure the director can respond accordingly with a letter answering those questions. Dave?
Can we move ahead and try to tie this property up with Kevin Boyd? Can we figure out what the pricing's gonna be and try to tie up a piece of property so that you know that you've got what you need to do this project?
Well, I think Oak Point stated earlier, and Rob, please correct me if I'm wrong, there has to be a process where you have to have two independent appraisals, and then it's the average of those appraisals, and I don't know that the DOE is going to order and pay for those appraisals until there's a selected site. Am I right there?
So just to follow up on what David's asking, are you looking more along the lines of, should we entertain the idea of an MOU of some kind with the landowner?
Mr. Precourt, we would want to just have an MOU or a purchase to buy, because if you buy it first before the other process, you own it, which would not be reimbursed. We would want to have a contract to purchase once that's done, because then you would have the ability for the state to pay that back. But I hear what you're saying. Yes.
Certainly, the Economic Development Department can ask Kevin Boyer what the price is that he's looking at for his parcel. That does not negate the fact and steps that we still have to go through as previously outlined, but I'm sure we can have those discussions.
And it probably would be prudent to do the same with Star Homes if we're keeping both pieces going.
I'm sure we can do both of those.
The point was made earlier that the state's not going to pay for analysis of two sites. I mean, they've already paid for one. And so all the work we've been doing to date is going to be on Saco. And going forward, it's an extensive amount of work. So just, I would recommend, if at all possible, that you come up with a decision of which site you want to continue with. You can keep the other one in abeyance just to make sure you're not being held hostage for the one. But, you know, the middle school site's going to cost, again, at least $15 million more than if there is a road or a driveway or whatever it is, than the other site, and the state's not going to pay for that. So just bear that in mind, and at some point you just have to make a decision as to what direction you want to go, and we'll run with it. But I strongly suggest you do it soon, because we're up against times for Department of Transportation analysis, and just the amount of work it's going to take to get one site to the state and start negotiating is going to take a lot of time.
School Board Member Preble.
I just want to reiterate what Councilor Johnston had said, that if we're really truly looking at both sites equally, that if the state will only fund one site, I don't know if the council would consider funding the similar studies at both sites, so that way we can get a well-rounded look at both sites and what that looks like.
Any further discussion?
I have a question. Who decides whether it's a road or a driveway? Who makes that decision? Nobody knows. You make that decision.
Director Fox.
I feel like I'm just going to try to make the most concise statement about the connector road that I can. The 2018-2019 study regarding future regional connections to the turnpike investigated ways to access regionally and locally. One recommendation that came out of that report, one of several options looked at, was to, after the new exit opens on the turnpike, to explore a convenient connector road from Route 5 to Route 112 to avoid some of the neighborhood cut-through that's been occurring for decades. It was suggested that we wait till the exit opens, because there's no way to quantify and size that road and exactly what it would take. Wait till the new exit opens, and then coordinate with a possible school expansion, because we did put in our consultant's mind at the time that we could be, looking at the middle school could have more students or more buildings at it. And then look at it at that time. So we haven't done that. There's no road designed. The city would have to, DOT is not going to take the lead. We haven't even signalized Jenkins Road yet. That's the short-term improvement. We're looking to do that in the next year. We need that just for some of the local access onto 112 as 112 gets busier. This was a 5 to 10 year look at it later recommendation of a high-level study. So to fast track this would mean the city would have to engage engineers for hundreds of thousands of dollars to look at a road that may or may not benefit neighborhoods, because really the area of Route 5 that you would turn onto a connector road isn't serving an area of Saco that's being built out at this time. It's requiring people to actually go out of town to cut over. So you're picking up some portion of inbound Dayton, Hollis area traffic. So would anyone at Public Works, city engineer, Public Works director, recommend building a $10 million road now based on projections of 2040 traffic volumes that we're somewhat guessing at with modeling software? No. So this really would not be looked at right now. So it does not align well with making a school decision, but the number of steps the city council would have to decide this is going to be a capital improvement that we place in front of immediate needs and do a full design of, and then couple it with a school project. So you are adding months of design delays to incorporate, to start meshing these two together for something that may or may not even have a large benefit is going to be really difficult for you to take advantage of the timeline you're on. And I can't say this is some magic. This is not a magic connector road that's going to solve the Route 112 corridor issues. It's not going to help the neighborhoods that are along 112. It may defer a little cut-through traffic in the short term, but it may be needed 10 or 15 years from now. So I don't think we're going to arrive at a quick decision. I could go to council, put together a proposal to go get an engineer to design this road, and they could vote on it, and then you'd design your project off of that. That is the path it could take, but I'm just not sure that I don't think a staff recommendation would be that we go and build a $10 million connector road tomorrow. So that's as clear a picture as I can put of where that connector road stands. It has never made it further than a concept, and we haven't even gotten through the other 3 major improvements that have to happen before we can determine whether it's viable. So.
Thank you.
Pat? How long approximately would it take for you to do this process that you just described to us?
Considering it crosses streams, there's no wetland analysis for the majority of this corridor. The land would require either, we'd have to go to the same owners that have already kind of apparently, not been in favor of working with the schools. And this wouldn't have a lot of variability. You'd pick a defined path for a straight road, and that's the corridor you'd be pursuing through either requests first or legal action second to put a road there. And again, that's not something Saco does not do that often. So you're talking years. You're talking months of design, a year at least of acquiring a property, And then you're trying to piece together, you've got to put traffic signals, you've got to widen Route 112 and Route 5 and create turn lanes. You need DOT traffic engineers to analyze this and approve it. It's years. I mean, we're 6 months to a year just to design and get ready for construction, a small sidewalk improvement on Route 9 on Ferry Road. So multiply that out to something of this scope that's supposed to be regional and needs a lot of approval from outside entities. It's years.
Thank you. Really quick, before you go, the alternative road, the squiggly line, what's the path for something like that, assuming that that's something that's going to be bonded from Saco? The state would not assist us with that.
Significant Army Corps of Engineers and DEP wetland and stream crossing permit discussions. Lots of survey because you have amazing topographic changes across there. We haven't built any roads along topographic changes like that in Saco in a long, long time. And it also crosses a Superfund landfill site, so you have to get EPA involved with the restrictions and distances. You have to be from the large landfill cap that was a Superfund closure site and is under very special land use and handling criteria. So again, you can quantify what you have to do with that one, and it is on land that the city either has rights to or owns. Again, you're crossing a CMP high transmission corridor, so that has its own distances and offsets and criteria and legal challenges to it. So neither of those road concepts for that are easy roads by any means. Both paths have a lot of entities involved. The CMP corridor being, I think, a challenging one because you can't just build under those high tension lines anywhere you want. So it's probably the same type of timeline. I mean, you could program it into your construction and design easier than probably, making the decision on whether we're even going to build a connector road. So I don't know if that helps.
School Board Member Truman.
To me, this seems like, first of all, we can't build just that little driveway there because we don't have the property and the owners are not interested. And then we can't design a school and then have the city come back and say, oh, we need to put the corridor in here because that's going to change a lot of things of like where that road can go. And the school building might actually be right in the middle of where it needs to go for that corridor. So if we use SMS, that could potentially shut down that whole option for the city if I'm reading what you're saying. And now, I'm taking what the professionals have told me just now, and that we're looking at 10 years potentially before we even see said road. And we're not waiting 10 years. We have the option to get tens of millions of dollars from the state. And for us to turn that down is foolish. But it is a harder one because we don't have the property and the person does not want to sell said property. The only way we can build a road into that property is to build a $15 million to $20 million road. So, and we still have to acquire 20 acres, either property. We own the we own the Clare property, but we have to acquire another piece that's 21 acres. And SMS, yeah, we own that too, but we still have to acquire another 20 acres because we have to replace the fields. Either way, we're looking at $20 million for a road. That's, I mean, just the logistics of all of that, in between the power lines and the logistics of going through all the wetlands that are in there and the topographical issues. I mean, to me, this seems kind of, the way that the professionals who do this for a living have presented this to me, SMS doesn't seem like, I mean, I know you're hard on getting SMS done, like that is your thing on that, but like, I think Claire really, from what they're presenting, makes way more sense.
School Board Member Archie.
Mayor Doyle, just really quick, what are the options of getting land for a driveway versus a road?
I think, unfortunately, it's the same question that Dave asked a little bit ago. Whether you buy the Star Homelands or whether you buy the Boyer land, in order to get reimbursed for that, the city shouldn't go out and buy it ahead of time in order to get reimbursed. So those are the two land parcels that would need to happen. I mean, I think the Fenderson Farm property, which is where that black line goes through, I mean, they've made it very clear they are not interested. Now, could that change if it's not a connector road and then maybe it's just a driveway? That's a possibility, but they have to be willing to come to the table to have those discussions. And it doesn't sound like for outreach that's an option. So with that, if SMS was the site and if you were looking to go down that road, barring they don't change their mind, you would have to use the right-of-way that runs along the transmission line on the Patterson property, and then run it through. Again, you're still having to buy Star Homes, so it would have to go through just like it's outlined in the, you know, in the projections here, in the sheets. So that's really the two parcels that have to be purchased. And again, we don't want to purchase them outright because then we don't get reimbursed by the state.
So we take our little hypothetical corridor there and our little driveway there. The only way that we could take, say, half of that corridor would be if we purchased it, the land.
The portion through the Fenderson Farm property?
Right.
Yeah, the only way to, well, I mean, there's other ways, but really you'd want to try and work out a purchase and sale agreement or an easement through the property for, you know, for whether it's a connector road or a driveway. You wouldn't want to take it by eminent domain. There is that option, but that's never a good thing, and I would never advocate to take somebody's land.
Yeah, I'm just trying to end the corridor conversation. I don't, we shouldn't be basing the school on a hypothetical road that we can and may not be able to take. Like, I think we need to stop talking about the corridor.
I think the right-of-way along the transmission lines is what you may need to focus on if you're looking at the SMS parcel, because that's already guaranteed. The question is, you still need Star Homes, both for that and to take care of the LWCF requirements for federal funding. So those are kind of the challenges. Again, you still have to do some challenges over at Clare too, because you're talking about coming in off of Route 1, so there's still building a road there that's not there today. You still have to build that, and then you have to build a road going through Millbrook. But again, you still have to acquire the Bollier property, so there's road challenges there as well. I don't know if that answered your question.
It does, thank you.
School Board Member LaFortune.
So I 100% agree that we need to stop talking about the connector amongst a number of things. The connector has been conceptual forever, but for whatever reason, it keeps coming up and coming up and coming up, so much so that these guys are stuck. And so I'm happy to move beyond that. I think the other thing that we need to move beyond in the spirit of let's move on from Sweetser is that the Fendersons are going to entertain another question. They aren't. They've already signaled to every single person who has gone and made a special house call that they are not interested in selling. We need to stop thinking that we're going to build a small road or a piece of a road. We need to move on from that, and that leaves us with any way to connect to that spot is this long road, or we're going in through the back of Star Homes, or we're going in through Hillview Heights. Those are the driveway options, period. So we have to really stop with well, maybe if we ask them again, they'll sell us something. It's not helping the process. It's just not. And it's really alienating them. They didn't ask for this publicity, and it's just enough. Leave them alone. They don't want to participate. Let it go. Thank you.
Yeah, as they said earlier too, I'm sorry, I don't know your name, but it was made clear that it clearly bothers them that this keeps coming up. And I think that we're doing them a disservice by continuing to talk about this as a potential option. I think for their sanity and for ours, so we can move on. Kevin's right. We need to just drop this corridor talk, the connector, and move on.
Jim.
For what it's worth, I appreciate the work that everybody is putting towards the school board and that selection committee. Everybody involved, it's been a long road. I would just simply like to say, whatever the decision that there's no way that when this finally comes to us, that I'm going to vote against it. It's, this is way past due, it's got to be done. It's followed the prescribed process, and again, my thanks to everybody involved. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we are at 10:10 this evening, and we still have an agenda to go through. And I believe the board rules say 10:30 is our cutoff time, so we got to get through this agenda in 20 minutes here.
So, Mr. Mayor,
School board member LaFortune.
I move we exit the workshop and enter the regular school board meeting.
Second.
I don't think we have to take a vote because we didn't enter into workshop that way. I think this is just
okay.
a workshop within the agenda for the meeting, so I don't think we need to vote to come out.
Okay, could we possibly take 5?
We can take a 5-minute recess, but please limit it to 5 minutes because, again, we only have 20 minutes to get through the agenda. Okay, welcome back. Let's continue to move through the agenda this evening. Up next is item 4, approval of the school board meeting minutes dated August 24, 2022. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Mr. Mayor, I move we approve the school board meeting minutes dated August 24th, 2022.
Second.
Motion's been made by School Board Member Truman, second by School Board Member Preble. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
School Board Member Johnston.
I just wanted to quickly say that my comment is it's not about the content of these particular minutes. I just wanted to say that I'm going to abstain from voting. The reason being was that I could not be here at that meeting, and although I did review some of the video, I did not do it all. So I just wanted people to understand that it seems wise to abstain from. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the minutes? Roll call on the minutes. School Board Member Archie?
Yes.
School Board Member Preble?
Yes.
School Board Member Richard?
Yes.
School Board Member LaFortune?
Yes.
School Board Member Gale?
Yes.
School Board Member Truman?
Yes.
And School Board Member Johnston.
Abstain.
That motion passes 6-0-1. Brings us to item 5. There are no adjustments to the agenda. Brings us to item 6, no correspondence. At this time, item 7, entertain public session. If there's any member of the public who would like to speak to the school board, please come forward and be heard. Seeing nobody coming forward, brings us to item 8, superintendent's report. Superintendent Ray.
I'm going to defer this report tonight because we have other items that I would like to spend an ounce of time on.
Thank you. Brings us to item 9, and Chair LaFortune, is there a chair report?
I have no report. I just would like to just note that Jeremy and I are going to be meeting with Thorne Academy this coming week to discuss a number of topics, and I'll report back to school board at our next meeting.
Thank you. Brings us to item 10, staff reports. There are no staff reports noted in the record. Brings us to item 11, board subcommittee meeting minutes. The strategic committee has the next meeting on 9/14 today at 5:30. And then the finance committee meeting is going to meet on the 28th at 4 p.m. ahead of the 5 p.m. school board meeting. And there's no meeting scheduled at this time for infrastructure. And Personnel Committee is in negotiations with SEA, will begin later this year. Any additions to the subcommittee meeting minutes? That brings us to item 12, old business. There is no old business on the agenda this evening. That brings us to item 13, new business. 13A is new hires. In your packet, you received a memo regarding new hires from
Mr. Mayor?
School Board Member Truman.
I move we approve the nomination of Christy Gomez, pre-K special ed education teacher, and issue a contract for the 2022-2023 school year.
Second.
Motion's been made by School Board Member Truman, second by School Board Member Preble. Any discussion? Roll call vote. School Board Member Archie?
Yes.
School Board Member Preble?
Yes.
School Board Member Richard?
Yes.
School Board Member LaFortune?
Yes.
School Board Member Gale?
Yes.
School Board Member Truman?
Yes.
School Board Member Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. That brings us, there are several other names for appointments and transfers requiring no action in that memo. Please feel free to read those at your convenience. Item B, stipend memo. There was a memo put forward by the school superintendent. Is there a motion?
Mr. Mayor?
School Board Member Truman.
I move we approve the nomination of those listed in the stipend memo and issue a contract for the 2022-2023 school year.
Second.
Motion's been made by School Board Member Truman, second by School Board Member Preble. Any discussion? Roll call vote. School Board Member Archie?
Yes.
School Board Member Preble?
Yes.
School Board Member Richard?
Yes.
School Board Member LaFortune?
Yes.
School Board Member Gale?
Yes.
School Board Member Truman?
Yes.
School Board Member Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Brings us to item C. There's resignations. There's another memorandum in your packet from Superintendent Ray regarding some resignations. Is there a motion? School Board Member Truman.
I move we accept the resignation of Celeste Libby, SMS teacher, effective September 6, 2022.
Second.
Motion's been made by School Board Member Truman, second by School Board Member Preble. Any discussion? Roll call vote. School Board Member Archie?
Yes.
School Board Member Preble?
Yes.
School Board Member Richard?
Yes.
School Board Member LaFortune?
Yes.
School Board Member Gale?
Yes.
School Board Member Truman?
Yes.
School Board Member Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Brings us to item D, an update on welcoming our new neighbors. There was a packet, or excuse me, a memorandum in your packet from Superintendent Ray. Superintendent Ray.
Just very briefly, we were informed, and Meg, correct me if I'm wrong, we were informed this afternoon that they are halting new move-ins at this time. We're at 60 rooms, is that where we're at? They are halting move-ins for a number of many different reasons. And for how long, Meg? But there are some other types of challenges that that organization faces. I think when it's all said and done, we're going to be thinking we will have a result of a much lower student count than what was initially presented to us. That's what we know today. That can all change tomorrow. But that's the short of it.
Superintendent Ray, we still have our morning meeting via Zoom tomorrow with the organization, City of Portland and State of Maine, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. Any questions on the memorandum regarding update on our welcoming our new neighbors into the community? Seeing no questions, moving on. Item E, a transportation update and options. There's a memorandum in the packet from Superintendent Ray. Superintendent Ray.
So this was something that I would have anticipated spending some time on. Let's get to the long and the short of it. The bottom line is we have 20 buses. 25% of our buses go to either serving 2 buses that go to Arundel and 3 buses that are pre-K only, dedicated pre-K. That takes 25% of our possible drivers not transporting the rest of the pre-K through 12 students, which leads to a situation that your 6 through 12 buses tend to be over maximum capacity. Just too many kids. First option that we put into play, and that I would recommend that you approve tonight, would be to have the Arundel buses, and Stacy has been working on this a lot with me, so Stacy, if I say this wrong, please correct us, would be to have our Arundel buses start earlier, picking up Arundel kids that go to Thornton Academy, leaving us 15 to 20 minutes to pick up some of the kids that were on the overfilled buses route to get under capacity so that we have space, improve space. Option 2 is one that I think we need to spend a little bit more time on and talking about. But it would be having some of our pre-K kids, especially those in North Saco, ride the regular bus run, because we have pre-K kids that are spending a good hour to an hour and a half on a bus run. That's a long time for a 4-year-old on a bus. That would be step 2. Obviously, every change impacts the routes a little bit differently, but we need to move in a situation where we have capacity on our buses, that they're not over full, and again, we try to hire drivers every single day, and it's just difficult. They're not there. And so, again, while I'd hoped that we'd spend a whole lot more time on this tonight, we tried to color code this so it was easy to see that those bluish purples are all the buses that are overcrowded. And when you look at chart number 2 of the yellows and the greens, by making some of those shifts, we can make this work. That's going to require us to adjust some bus routes, adjust some people's schedules, do all of those pieces, and adjust the time of Arundel kids that come to Thornton Academy. If not, we just don't have the resources to not have buses that are over capacity.
Superintendent Ray, so you were asking for the school committee to approve option 1, which shifts the bus routes for the Arundel students and some of the, and allows for pickup of some of the overcrowding on the other buses? And then are you looking for option 2 to come back so that there can be greater discussion?
Yeah, I would bring back number 2, because I think that's a big kind of a shift of us if we haven't, in this community, had our pre-K kids on the K through 5 runs. And there's some pluses and minuses in both of those decisions, but we'd be waiting another 2 weeks of having buses over capacity at the high school, middle school level if we don't take action on option 1.
Any questions regarding the transportation report from Superintendent Ray? School Board Member Truman?
I just want to say that it looks like, too, I know we're going to come back to this one, but it looks to me from the report from surrounding areas that have a pre-K, that pre-K rides the same bus as K through 5.
Correct.
If they even offer transportation to the pre-K.
And that is correct. And again, there's pluses and minuses in every situation. I think that for parents, if you're putting all of your kids on one bus at one time, a lot of parents would see that as a plus. If you're in a situation where you do have multiple kids on that bus, you probably feel a little bit better if your pre-K kid is getting on there with, say, their 3rd grade sibling. That probably makes a little sense. And I know it would be, it's hard to look at any pre-K parent and say, yeah, an hour and a half is a great time for a 4-year-old to be on a bus. No one wants to do an hour and a half with your kid as a 4-year-old in the car, let alone a bus. So, I mean, just think about the number of times you stop with your own kids with a 4-year-old.
Any further questions on this? Is there a motion? School Board Member Gale?
Make a motion, we adopt option 1.
Second.
Motion's been made by School Board Member Gale, second by School Board Member Truman, to approve option 1 for shifting the bus schedules to reduce overcrowding. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, roll call vote. School Board Member Archie?
Yes.
School Board Member Preble?
Yes.
School Board Member Richard?
Yes.
School Board Member LaFortune?
Yes.
School Board Member Gale?
Yes.
School Board Member Truman?
Yes.
School Board Member Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Brings us to item F, which is an enrollment update. There is a link to a memorandum in their packet. Superintendent Ray, any discussion on the enrollment update?
Information provided to the board that includes all students attending our schools, including our new neighbors.
Thank you. Any questions for Superintendent Ray regarding the enrollment report? School Board Member LaFortune.
Thanks, Norman. Just one quick question around the Thornton Academy numbers. Those are trending lower than they have. Am I correct with that?
That is correct. And in the budget, we had 890 students budgeted. So we're in a pretty good place, even if our new neighbors creeps up a little bit. Now, I do want to caution people, these are like first week of school numbers. And so 2 things happen. Kids registered and it's not quite updated in the system, or kids move. And sometimes it's not uncommon to have kids on your rolls for a couple of weeks that another school just hasn't gotten around to requesting their records, especially if they're out of state. So you could actually see that number go down.
Any questions further on the enrollment? Moving on to item G, second reading of policies. Policy BEA, school board use of email and other electronic communications. Policy BEDJ, broadcasting taping of board meetings. Policy BG-R, school board policy procedure. And policy BCB, board member conflict of interest. Is there a motion to approve the policies? School Board
Mr.
Member
Mayor.
Johnston?
I'm sorry. I move we approve the second reading of policies BEA, BEDJ, BG-R, and BCB.
Second.
Motion's been made by School Board Member Johnston, second by School Board Member Truman. Any discussion on the second reading of policies? Seeing no discussion, roll call vote. School Board Member Archie?
Yes.
School Board Member Preble?
Yes.
School Board Member Richard?
Yes.
School Board Member LaFortune?
Yes.
School Board Member Gale?
Yes.
School Board Member Truman?
Yes.
School Board Member Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 to approve the second reading of policies. That brings us to item 14, other information. There's no other information in the record tonight, or on the packet, rather. Brings us to item 15. There's no executive session this evening. And that brings us to item 16. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
School Board Member Johnston is a first. School Board Member Preble is second. Any discussion on adjourning? Oh, my apologies. Record School Board Member Truman as the,
No, I just wanted to clarify, I did not actually make that motion.
okay, thank you. Any discussion on adjourning? Roll call vote to adjourn. School Board Member Archie.
Yes.
School Board Member Preble.
Yes.
School Board Member Richard.
Yes.
School Board Member LaFortune.
Yes.
School Board Member Gale.
Yes.
School Board Member Truman.
Yes.
School Board Member Johnston.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 to adjourn at 10:30. Have a great evening, everyone.